Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Salt Lake Worldwide podcast. And we're going to call this version 2 with Wayne Dell from Africa Brothers Safaris on account of, well, Riverside kind of screwed the pooch on the last episode. So instead of recording the second half, we're just going to start over, give it a fresh start, drink some rum and whiskey with our good friend Wayne, and get after it.
Welcome to Salt Lake Worldwide Podcast, your ultimate destination for hunting, fishing, conservation, and gear. From international hotspots to the backwoods of America, we bring you the real stories, raw opinions, and the conversations others won't have. Buckle up. The adventure starts now.
We already did this once before, at least we attempted this once before, and it turned out like shit in the final. But for the people that don't know who you are, just give them a brief rundown. Who is Wayne Dell? Talk to us a little bit about Africa Brothers Safaris.
Well, guys, as Sean said, my name's Wayne Dell. I'm from the Eastern Cape of South Africa, born and bred here. Good old farm kid. Grew up hunting with my dad. I've got an identical twin brother who's also an avid hunter. So that's where the passion for hunting came from. Hunting with my old man, being a houndsman, hunting bushpig and hunting kudu every season. So from there, the passion grew, and I thought, well, let me get into being a professional hunter. And that's where it's taken us through the steps to becoming an outfitter and dealing with international clients from all over the world and showing them what South Africa is all about.
That's perfect. So, you guys are really known for true bushveld hunts, down and dirty, getting into it, getting into some thick shit with some really cool locations.
Balls deep, baby.
I mean, with this. We're getting kicked off before we even get started. So, bitch.
Continue.
Yeah. Sorry, man, you broke up just a little there. You're talking about bushbuck hunts, eh? Or bushpig hunts?
No, no. I said you guys are in a part of the Eastern Cape, right? That's known for it's a true bushveld hunt, right? It's true to the Eastern Cape. Yeah, talk a little bit about that because and we've talked before, and in all fairness to everybody, Wayne and I've known for a while. And we've tried to do this podcast a couple of times now, and it just goes back to it. However, tell us about it, because you're geographically, people think about Africa in its entirety as a continent. They don't understand that, though they understand that there's several countries within the continent of Africa. When you talk about South Africa specifically, for whatever reason, people get this ideal that it's the Ernest Hemingway, type of Africa. It's everything you've read about, but that's not the case. You guys got 9 provinces in South Africa alone, and all of them are geographically special and biodiverse like crazy. Within a couple hours, especially where you live, you can go through 3 or 4 different binomes. This is a really cool thing.
Yeah, no, look, everyone gets that whole picture of Africa, beautiful savannas, the lovely big acacia trees, and the further inland you go and you get the baobabs and all that stuff. But actually, there is just such a varying variety of bushveld. And as you say, the good old Eastern Cape bushveld. And even where in the Eastern Cape itself, where I'm based on the coast, I'm based on the Fish River Valley, the Great Fish River Valley, and the Cap River Valley on the opposite side of the property. And we've got the Indian Ocean directly in front of us. That thick Indian Ocean bush is something absolutely unique and something different to hunting. So you guys have experienced it hunting Tiny 10, those who go after their Orobi and their blue duiker and grijsbuck and stuff will visit the Eastern Cape along the coastlines, which is really, really different experience to hunting 2 hours north of us, getting into the Winterberg mountain range where you're going to be hunting those Farleys, mountain redbuck, and much more open, very, very little vegetation, a couple of big valleys. And then obviously you go, slightly west of that, you put yourself into the Karoo, which is semi-desert. And again, if you go towards Cape Town, you put yourself into a bit of, natural rainforest type vibe. You can get in on the Western Cape side. So very, very, very unique itself in South Africa with all the different biomes that we have.
Yeah. And for, there's a lot of people that, like I said, just to go back and I regress a little bit, and I've got Mike here with me. And so Mike, your first trip over was several years ago and you made a bunch of trips now. What was what from a newbie's perspective, what did you think was going to happen? Did the terrain shock you? Was it surprising? What was your take on it?
Yeah, the terrain was definitely surprising, especially when we're up kudu. You think that, you think it's all flat stuff, but it's definitely not. It's like down here in Kentucky, there's mountains, it's rough terrain, rocky, and we went in wintertime, obviously. For them, it was winter. And it was actually still pretty warm, but yeah, no, it was definitely surprising for me. I bowed through my sucker in the dirt on a kudu hunt, and it actually unfolded, but that's another story. But no, we were successful, and it was a lot of work. But yeah, the terrain it's a little bit of everything. You got mountains, you got flats, you got open areas, you got all kinds of things for sure.
You hunted on a dairy farm, if I'm not mistaken, at one point in time.
Yep. Yeah.
So
we hunted on a lot in lots of places. Wherever the magic happens.
Well, that's the awesome part about it, because you can hunt on all these private properties and they don't have to be game ranches. They stock ranches, running dairy ranches, beef and cattle and sheep ranches. So I predominantly do, I want to say probably 80% of my hunting when I book clients, if I book them in our hunting season, it starts either it's May, June, July, or June, July, August, depending on what the government says it's going to be that year. The last few years it's been June, July, August for kudu and all your other species on open ranches. I hunt them on cattle ranches, dairy ranches. You go after your bushbucks, your duikers, and all that type of stuff. And then the animals, like, obviously in the Eastern Cape, you're going to hunt Cape buffalo. You're going to be hunting it behind a high fence. You're going to be hunting other species that are introduced. If you introduce a species, you obviously need a CAE, or a certificate of adequate enclosure, as it is, to introduce these animals. And then you need to be able to keep them in, that they don't go onto your neighboring properties. But as you guys know, hunting here, our high fence ranches are massive. So, it's still a fair chase hunt, if we're going to get into the whole high fence thing. But you've got that absolute variety of land to hunt. And like I said, I can go 2 hours from me and I'm going to end up in the mountains, which is completely different to here. And if I drive in a truck and I go like 6 or 8 hours from me, I end up in the Northern Cape. And my brother and I and my dad used to do a yearly trip up into the Northern Cape to go and try and experience something different. And that was completely, exciting for us, because we are Eastern Cape boys. We've hunted here and we've hunted the varying terrain in the Eastern Cape, but going and getting into those little koppies and those big ironstones and hunting something different, a little bit more open and thorn trees. Yeah, it's a completely different experience. So there's everything for everyone here. You can, and I think the best thing about South Africa, if I put it this way, is when you've got guys that come out, we can cater towards every fitness style, bow hunters, crossbow hunters, unfit, fit. You can do the Texan hunt where you sit on the back of the pickup and shoot, because a CAE property allows that, other properties don't. But you've got a bit of everything for everyone.
Yeah, and you touched briefly, and I'd be remiss if we didn't go back and discuss it. There's this, Americans especially, when we go to South Africa, we have this preconceived notion about what a high fence hunt is based on our limited knowledge here in the States, right? We've got it in our head for whatever reason that these are small places and they're going to be very similar to what you'd find, in Texas or places. And we've done some high hunts in Florida. We've been in Pennsylvania. We've been all over the place, but our ranges here are much smaller, comparatively speaking. And even with you guys, if you're going to hunt in Limpopo, for example, those concessions are much smaller. You go from a concession that could be, 1,000 hectares there to the Eastern Cape where there are tens of thousands of hectares and bigger. And that's just this notion that people have. They don't understand when you say high fence that these aren't small little paddocks you're hunting. You're not going to chase these animals down and put them in a corner. These are massive pieces of property where in some cases, these animals don't even know fence exists. And I would also caution people, and let's talk about that for a second. When you say fair chase, that implies that the animal has an equal or greater chance to escape and evade. And that's very important.
Yeah.
When you've got land that's big and that diverse, those animals can escape and they can do it quickly. I've seen it dozens of times now. I'm like, you've seen it, but people that are coming over, they kind of get the wrong impression about what this hunt is going to be. And then they get over there and then instantly everybody's blown away. They're like, oh my God, this was cool. And let's dive into there, really ruffle the feathers from the get go. And also too, let's touch on the fact that for me anyway, for the vast majority of the species, they're not the vast majority, but for especially your larger species, a fence is merely a suggestion.
Yeah.
Let me get your perspective on that. You've got a client coming over for the first time and they've envisioned this sort of, what are you going to tell a client? You're conversating with a potential client back and forth on WhatsApp, on the phone, having conversations. They bring up fence hunting. What do you tell those people?
So straight up, what I tell to the guys, and obviously it's just my personality, is be honest with the guys and upfront of what they're wanting to book and hunt. Okay, then that'll determine what area we're going to be hunting in, especially also the time of year that they choose. So if they, like I mentioned, in our hunting season, they'll have more land available to hunt on, being stock ranches. But if they come out of hunting season, everything will predominantly be done on half fence ranches. So the law in South Africa is, I think it's 340 hectares, is the smallest CAE half-fenced property that you can get. So that's roughly about 700 acres, if I do my maths right, 700. But if you come to South Africa, you won't find a place that size, which is half-fenced in, because no one in their right mind is going to fence a property, what we call that size small, to hunt with clients. Yep. It'll be some person who wants a little touch farm, basically, and he'll have a few animals, zebra and stuff wandering around, but it won't be a hunting ranch. So the properties that we're looking at are like minimum 2,000 to 3,000 hectares, so 4,000 to 6,000 acres. Those will be your small properties. But from there, it becomes 40, 50, 60,000 acre squares. 10,000 is about your average, I want to say 10,000 acres. That's an average property that you'd be hunting on here. And it's absolute fair chase, because even those big animals that you're talking about that think kudu, they put a fence up, they call it a kudu fence. We've seen videos all over social media showing otherwise. I've seen it firsthand as a guide hunting with clients, and I watched 6 kudu bulls jump out of a property into another property. There's a hot female on the other side of the fence, guys. The bloke's booking it. He's going to go breed what he can. You know what I mean? So kudu, eland, they don't stay in a half fence. Yes, it'll slow them down, but they will hop out if they're females on the other side. So the best part of, I always explain to guys, if they're running game ranches, and we chat to a lot of guys, you've got to have food availability and you've got to have females. You'll have the bulls. Even though you didn't introduce bulls, you'll have those big quality iron bulls. All your creeping animals, your bushbucks, your darkers, your shit like that, those fences mean nothing. Your mountain, they crawl through. So, I would say, like your rarely plains gamey stuff, your blessbuck and blue wildebeest and red hawk, those type of things, they're going to bash through a fence if they find a weak spot. But other than that, most of your game is just going to, we got warthogs, they're the biggest menace under the sun, and they hit holes under everything. And once there's a hole in the bottom of the fence, everything from a nyala down to a rat goes out. So you can't contain animals the way people think they can contain them. They can move regardless if there's a fence on them.
If they want out, they're getting out. It doesn't matter what you have, period.
Exactly. Yeah. So, like when I say to the clients, you're coming to hunt on a half fence ranch, the reason why you're hunting in this this time of the year, that just gives us the opportunity to hunt longer seasons. So hunting from the 1st of January to the 31st of December can only be done on a half-fence ranch, because obviously private property, if you introduce game, the game belongs to you. It's not like by you guys where the game belongs to the state. If it's privately owned land, the animals belong to the owner when they're on the property. So, that's what has to be kept in mind when guys come and visit. There's a lot of comparison, people thinking, okay, what's happening in the rest of the world, like North America and stuff. But you guys have got those massive scapes of land that you guys hunt on your public land. We don't have that. So if you're going to be doing any hunting, it's going to be on private ranches.
Yeah, and that's a great thing. We did a podcast with Doug Coproff and Split In Taxidermy a couple of years ago now. Yeah. And, Doug's explanation of the high fence, on top of it being merely a suggestion, there was a quote that came from that podcast that I really liked. And he said, in South Africa, especially here in the Eastern Cape, he's like, essentially a high fence is, the way he explained it was, good fences make good neighbors. And one of the reasons behind that, that's so much different than what we have during the States, in that the individual farmer, the landowner, they own the animals, right? So here, we're in Kentucky right now, and we've got a big spread here for North American standards, in that we've got 1,000 acres to hunt here. Yeah. But this game travels to and from and fro, and the state and the federal government, they own these whitetails, they own the bear, they own the elk that's here. They're not our animals, which vast.
No police at all.
Yes. Yeah. And that's, so it's vast different between your model and our model. And, I still go back. I love the North American model of conservation for us. I think it's the best thing that's ever been invented. And that's the one thing that we have that you don't have, is you don't have public land. So people can't just go out and go hunting, or you have very little land that's available for those people. Just in this state alone, there's millions of acres of land for people to go out and enjoy it and utilize it during different hunting seasons, and use it for recreation year round. And that's a big difference between what happens here and what happens in South Africa. But because of that, and because of the way the system's set up, if you own the animals, you're the biggest conservationist. Those animals have a value, and it's your job to take. I mean, that as a concession owner, a farm owner, an outfitter, if those animals aren't taken care of, or if they're in poor health, there's no value to the animal anymore, and it costs you money.
Very true. Very, very true.
Yeah. So, and before we get too far with this too, so I want to mention the podcast real quick, because, your podcast is doing great on YouTube, and I actually, I like to download it when I'm driving. So when I'm going back and forth between Florida, Kentucky, or Ohio, or Georgia, like I listen to your podcast, and there's several good podcasts that come out of South Africa, but I really like yours, especially when you go back and you kind of deep dive the hunt that you just went through, kind of a hunt recap. That's really cool for people, especially on the state, to listen to. And, the channel is African Brother Safaris, correct? But the podcast, is it Stalking Shadows? Is that what the name of the podcast is?
Yeah, Stalking Shadows is the name of the podcast. Yeah, on Spotify and on Apple Podcast.
Yeah, it's legit. Talk to us a little bit about that. On top of, you and your family are working the farm. You're an outfitter full time. You're also, releasing, I don't know how many podcasts you released this year, but it's like 5 times the amount that we released this year. And I know how hard it is to do, 12 a year, much less if you got 30 or 40 that you ever put together. How in the do you find time to do that?
It's a lot of late hours, and especially I've got a little one like you. My little one's only 18 months old. So I've got to try and balance the scales of that. So the podcast, I've had the YouTube channel for quite some time, and it struggled along until like COVID came about. And my brother and I actually started doing the bushpig hunts and documenting how we set up baits and stuff. So that kind of started rolling the podcast. I mean, the YouTube channel. Then obviously when I hunt with clients, I try and self-film a lot of stuff and just put memories together. And that's kind of what we've been sharing. And I got invited onto Dylan Love's podcast, or the PH Journals, because I've known Dylan for years. And he said, well, come, Wayne, I need to have a chat with you. You're one of the older outfitters that I met, and all the PHs. I was hunting at a company where he, apprenticed and started hunting. So that's how we got to know. And he said, yes, Wayne, you're actually quite good in the front of the camera, in front of the mic. Why don't you start a podcast channel. And I'm like, Dylan, I don't need extra work on my hands. So on the YouTube channel, I started the Stalking Shadows stories. So the reason for the starting the stories was to show people a bit about obviously Africa without actually having a hunt. Because you know when you sit back and you watch the hunt, I'm famous for it, and a lot of people are famous for it, is sitting there and scrolling to the good shit and getting to that impact shot. So I started
I'm
the
guilty.
stalking shadow thing because you got to listen to the story, and if you miss the detail, you're not going to get to the end. And I was kind of doing podcasts on my YouTube channel without having a podcast channel. And I sat back listening to these, and then eventually I said to my wife, I said, well, maybe there is something in this. Let's start the podcast channel, share what the season's been like, ups and downs, the actual true industry ups and downs, where you get shitty outfitters, you get shitty PHs, you get shitty clients, and share my personal experiences. So all those stories in there, from clients that didn't pay me when I started my outfitting business, clients not tipping, guys giving tips to people, that are worthy, or turning around and kind of saying, okay, shit, what did I do wrong this hunt? As a PH, for the young guys to learn from it. Don't do this in front of your clients. So it was more like a learning story as I went with it, and yeah, people have enjoyed it. So it's grown a hell of a lot quicker than my YouTube channel. So that's how the podcasting came about.
Yeah, and that was and kind of a funny story. We touched on it briefly in the podcast that probably nobody will ever see now because it was shit. Not that the conversation we had was shit, but the way the final audio and video showed that we had to do it again. Yeah. But it was funny. So I released a podcast. I don't know. It was over a year ago, and I was going back through, and for some reason, and I pride myself, I always respond to every comment. Right, that's something I do, and you see me do it, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, whatever. I always respond. I had these 2 unresponded to comments from this just like random outfitter on a video that I put out. I think I was trashing FASA, and maybe it was a segment that I'd done with Dylan Love. And so, a year later, you and I have already talked. We've kind of worked on this wide thing together. And then I see these 2. I'm like, son of a bitch. Like, me and I respond to everybody. I didn't respond to back then. And it just kind of went full circle.
I thought you didn't like me.
So FASA, since we last spoke, FASA's got some problems right now. I mean, I'm actually in possession of a lawsuit that was newly filed against FASA with another executive ruling that I just got my hands on about 35 seconds ago. So I apologize if I was looking at my phone when I'm supposed to be talking to you, but I've been kind of waiting on this document to surface so I can go ahead and bash those again. But that's kind of how you and I reach out to me, and you don't have an affiliation with FASA or custodians or any of those guys, and we talked about that before, and you had a great response why you don't. So go through that a little bit, and for the people that don't know what we're talking about with FASA, and there's another group called Custodians in South Africa that are essentially, they're a legislative body made up of a membership group to facilitate and help outfitters and hunters.
Bullshit.
Well, on paper, that's what they're set out to do.
Yeah, so I remember the comments on it. It was actually the podcast you did with Jonathan McHugh. So I hunted for Jono way back in 2016, just after I had that client screw me out and I was on the bones of my ass. And I actually, it's a funny story. I reached out to Jono on a Facebook post. And at the time, no one wanted to hire me, as, like I said, there's this whole thing of, I don't know if they scared I'm going to steal clients, or people are nervous about what I do or say, but I'm just honest and straightforward. And Jono put a post out there looking for a young PH to apprentice, hit me up. And I was doing handyman work at the time. And I sent him a message, and he actually replied back to me. He says, Wayne, you're too qualified for this position. I said, but I will take anything you offer right now. I need to do some work to help me get through this this whole mission. And that's how I met Jono, and Jono and I got on really, really well. He's actually my MC at my wedding. And he was on your podcast, and I made sure I watched that one because him and I had the same understanding and very similar views when it came to a lot of the hunting industry things. And I think in that podcast, if I'm not mistaken, was related to the quality of the PHs in South Africa more recently, and that the qualification standards have been junk. And I hopped on there and I said, well, hit me up. I'll tell you about how our what's it called, qualifications had to be back in the day to what the guys were doing now to become registered PHs. And FASA was jumping up and down going, oh, our PHs are all top rank and blah, 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 blah. They part of other PH schools and stuff like that. I got a guy that I know who's just recently done his, I'm not going to mention names, at a PH school. And there, when we used to do ours, it was 10 days intense. You had to go, obviously, do all the rifle stuff, the skinning, the catering, the hosting, all the government legislation papers, the exams and stuff. So the way the PH thing was set up back then was for like farmers, outdoor people, to do an intense 10-day course, and then they could be registered with the government as a professional hunter in the Eastern Cape. And the PH schools over the years have literally basically printed money and took money for teaching these guys absolutely all, and they go out into the world as PHs, bragging that they're PHs, and they don't know what they're doing. I myself, when I went out, I was an avid hunter. I was a lot older. Could only register as 21. I was 24, 25 at the time, so I had a bit more sense between my ears, because obviously you're dealing with a lot older client demographic, because it's all retired guys, businessmen. So in my opinion, young oaks shouldn't be doing it. They should be apprenticing until they've got a bit between their ears. And yeah, FASA was bragging at how good the South African PH is. Yeah, the older generation guys are brilliant. There's no doubt about it. There are some really top-notch old school PHs that everyone should still learn from. But what the South African PH schools are pumping up now is absolute rubbish, because a guy will get there, pay his fee, he's going to write the government exams. All he has to do is actually pass the government exams at the end of the day. And if you're good enough at reading legislation and regurgitating it back on the paper, you will pass as a PH. Whether you actually know what you're doing in the bush or not, it's a different story. And these guys were getting away with it. And I think that's where the conversation came up with FASA. And I said, I think in my comment, FASA in their babble bullshit again, saying, this is, we got the, defending the PHs. Yes, defend those that are good at it. But guys, there's a lot of shit that's coming out there, and that's straight up. And you'll see it in the industry. You'll see it on social media. Social media wasn't a big part of it back in the day. So it's all your shitty stuff is aired now. And you'll see it in the quality of the animals. And unfortunately, the client doesn't know, what's quality and what's not. Your pH is supposed to. Your pH is supposed to determine between a quality trophy, or even better, determine between a male and female animal. I had guys in my class that couldn't distinguish between the two on a freaking blessbuck. They shot the wrong animals and they still passed their PH school to guide clients. And to me, that's bullshit. There was one guy who couldn't even shoot the target at 25 yards, and he licensed as a professional hunter. So they mustn't go, South African PHs. Yes, they are the good ones, the guys that grew up on the farm, that have gone through basically what your guys' Hunter Ed program, where we've got mentors, our fathers, our grandfathers, or friends of our father or whatever, that mentored us correctly. And then we went and did the government stuff that we know what to do with clients, with the legal side of things. But the practical side of it, guys were passing and they were absolutely dog shit.
Yeah, and just to kind of recap, remember, so Jono, when we did the Jono podcast, we actually did it from Kentucky. So it was our first and only podcast that we did remotely from Kentucky. You're actually the second, so it's cool, that worked out. But as part of that, I was telling John, yes, by that point in time, you guys had already been to South Africa, and I started bringing groups. But I'd been for a lot of years and gone through that process. And man, I had some shitty PHs. Like I had some very good PHs, but I also had some very shitty PHs that I wouldn't smack in the ass if they were on fire. Like, they would not throw a bucket of water on them, put them out. I mean, that kind of shit you've got. And so in the FASA thing, full disclosure, like I bought into the FASA thing, and with Tony DeBrain and Randy Rod and all those guys, right? I bought into their bullshit. And then really when I started releasing those episodes too, people were reaching out like, hey, there's way more of the story. You need to look back at what happened and why a big part of the membership group broke off and created custodians because of the CBL deal and all the other bullshit. And the more and more I've looked into it, and the more I've actually been involved with other people that have had issues, that organization is not what people think it is. Yeah. And it my membership, Salt Lake, we pulled our membership a year ago, and if you think that organization is there to help you if shit hits the fan in South Africa when you're on a safari, I got news for you. It's fucking horseshit. They're not going to do anything.
You're fucking bullshit.
Yeah, they're going to make themselves look good and try to make PHs that are registered with FASA look good. They don't give a flying they don't give a flying about the consumer. And unfortunately, if you don't take care of the consumer, which are international hunters, there's a problem. And it may not be this week or next week, but with all these lawsuits coming down and all,
look at all everything that's coming out now.
Yeah, I literally just got to have a suit in my hand right now.
Shit's just coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah. So like with FASA, I've never been a member. I've got other family members who've been PHs far longer than me. I've got an uncle who's one of the old school, back in the day where they started, who isn't. I still think now he's not a member. Like my cousin's part of SCI and Dallas and those type of things, but they're not members of FASA. And all the guys that I looked up to, and FASA put out something that we all had to put a panic in all the PHs. There was this video going around that you had to become accredited with FASA, and yet those PHs who haven't done this accreditation and this FASA exam are going to be no longer registered PHs. And I reached out to a bunch of older PHs, and I said to them, I said, well, guys, what are you going to do about this? Are we all paying to go back to school, to go repay for something that we've done already to get this other accreditation? So they basically wanted from my understanding, I could be completely wrong, they wanted our PH license as having a PH to be a diploma and I think noticed out of overseas that you are a registered professional hunter. As from my understanding, and I've got a buddy who's running a place in Spain. He opened up an outfitting business because he wasn't going to buy property in South Africa and open up one here. He didn't do any damn exams, and he's a professional hunter in Spain, yet he's got a PH. That didn't help him jack shit, that's it. And FASA was pushing this narrative that all these people, and it got a lot of people in panic, and they went and did this whole exam. It's never ever materialized. I think it was 2 years ago this thing came out, and it's never materialized. So I think they push people to go pay for that shit, and they don't need it. Because I'm registered with the government. All I need is my government outfitter's license and my government professional hunter's license, and keep that valid and do the number of hunts I need to do in 3 years to keep the license going. That's what I need. I don't need a certificate from an affiliation. And then the other thing with FASA is I went on there because at one stage also I wanted to join because everyone had these memberships. And I'm like, okay, well, what do we get out of the memberships? So you can pay, if you're an under 21 PH, a certain amount. If you're over 21, this. If you're a registered outfitter, you have to pay this. So I can't even pay as a PH. I got to pay the outfitter fee because I'm a registered outfitter. And what we were having to pay didn't make mathematical sense to me to pay that yearly, because what do you actually benefit or gain out of it? So, like, I got a good couple of buddies. We talk about COVID and stuff. A couple of really good PA.
We're back. Sorry about the technical delay there, folks, but when you're filming remotely, shit happens. So we were talking about FASA and bashing the shit out of down. And Wayne was, so bring us back up to speed with exactly why they're such douchebags again, Wayne.
No, look, like I say, I'm not affiliated to them and stuff like that. It didn't make mathematical sense for me as a small outfitter to outlay that money yearly to be part of the affiliation and be put onto their list of outfitters on their website. When I pay enough money to have my own damn website, I run my own social media stuff. So I wasn't really going to gain anything out of it. So definitely not part of it. You know what I mean? And like I say, I know a lot of buddies of mine and stuff that when COVID hit, they were left to their own devices. Most of them aren't PHs anymore. Some guys left the country to, because at that time when you've got these affiliations, you'd expect them to try and help some way or the other, especially if there are guys paying every year for how many years to be members. So, like I said, I'm definitely not one to be, I'm not one of the sheep to follow the rest of the herd. Look my own direction, I get on with it.
I don't want to go back to that, but from and these are all issues that are clearly South African. And I want to preface to the people that are watching Americans, we preach, we love South Africa, we go every year. These are kind of internal issues that South Africans and South African PHs deal with and shit. By no means the FASA or custodians, whatever they do, they're not going to dictate the time you had there. That's for people that have been there for years and kind of dive into the politics behind the scene. South Africa is safe. Go to South Africa, hunt. We dive into some of the political shit there, but we still go every year. So if we thought it was unsafe, we would not go. We know it's safe because we bring groups every year and we still love the country. It's no different than our country. You look at our politics. Yeah. There's shit that happens here that we absolutely hate and we can't stand for, and we don't stand for, and we don't get behind those people or those organizations. So it's the same thing there. So anybody watching, don't take this as, don't go to South Africa because you just trashed this group. FASA doesn't have a thing to do with hunting South Africa. No. You don't have to be affiliated with them. And frankly, you may go there and hunt 12 years in a row. You may never hear the name you mentioned. Period. That's irrelevant.
No, well, that's the thing. Like, they're hundreds of registered outfitters, thousands of registered outfitters in the Eastern Cape alone. I can tell you what, not even a percentage of them are FASA members. You know what I mean? It's so getting back to that whole getting your PH license and becoming an outfitter and where I think the whole blow up is, where you've got so many outfitters and PHs now, is years ago when I did my license, most of these schools did 3 groups a year. So it was about 30 professional hunters being registered a year in every province. So as a PH, you were sought after. Outfitters would contact you to come and hunt and work. You wouldn't run around chasing work, and you were valued as a commodity where you got paid well and you made money. The government, that's again like our government, you guys talk about the government there, the government screwed up and said they're going to turn it into a 4-year course, and when they threatened that, the PH schools realized they were going to become irrelevant, and they pumped out numbers like a sausage factory. And that's why we've got so many PHs that aren't qualified to do the job. And the fact that there's so many young PHs, because they were allowing guys under 21 years of age to license or do the school. And a lot of the guys, if you find a PH that's under 21, he may have done the school, he may have passed the school. He's by no means, I think in the Eastern Cape, I still think it's 21 years old that you can only submit your paperwork and licensing to become a registered guide to host international clients. That hasn't changed as far as I know. People can correct me here. There are some provinces that allow for 18-year-olds, but very few of them. Most of them are 21-year-olds. So if you're ending up with a PH that's guarding you and he's under 21, by no means is that a licensed to do so, and your trophies will not be on his damn register. They'll be on the outfitter's register, because the outfitter is too cheap to pay a PH. He hires this young oak who's not actually licensed. He does the damn hunt and then signs it off on his register. That's often what happens. And then, again, when you're starting to hunt dangerous game, bear in mind, if you're getting a PH that's under 25 years old and he's a dangerous game professional hunter and he's done 100 buffalo, folks talking shit somewhere along the line. Because when it comes to the legal standpoint of doing that, you got to be 21, you got to have hunting experience and hunted with registered dangerous game PH who signs you off at the end of it. You've got to do shit. I think it's three of the big five, or not big five, the dangerous seven. So that's including croc and stuff like that. So it can be any of the three. And you've got to do like, I can't remember what the days were, but it took me years. I only registered now 2 years ago as a dangerous game PH, where I can guard clients legally as a dangerous game PH, because I had to work up the hours and do all the paperwork. And there are guys that are behind me and younger than me and have hunted far less than me, and they've all got licenses. And you wonder, how the hell did they get this right? So yeah, just bear in mind, if you're going to book a dangerous game hunt, your guy's got to have some age on him.
Yeah, the scandalous bullshit that happened a few years ago now, where it came out that there was an individual that was issuing dangerous game licenses in the Eastern Cape that was simply taking money and signing off. So, and I go back, that's a perfect point. If you got a 25-year-old or 22-year-old that says they've got a dangerous game license, how is that possible? Well, and frankly, do you want to put your life in that dude's hands?
It's physically impossible, right? If he's under 25 years old and he's got a dangerous game license. I don't care who the wants to question me on that, because it's the same as a outfitter, right? I think the law still stands. Yeah, you got to be a registered PH for 4 years before you can apply to become an outfitter. So if you've got a guy that's 24 years old or 23 years old, where the hell has he done his 4 years and he only licensed as a 21-year-old to be a registered outfitter? So, you can do basic maths to vet the people that you book with. I mentioned it in one of my Stalking Shadows stories to say, there is a simple way of checking out, whether these oaks are legit or not. And it loops back into the scenario. So there's a FASA. So there in the FASA thing, if you're under 21 or you're 18, this is the amount you pay as a PH. If you're under 21, you actually you're not a PH, in my opinion. You got to be 21 years and older. So when the shit hits the fan and he's a FASA registered PH, are they going to bail him out when there's a problem between him and a client and somebody died? He's 21 years old and the shit has hit the fan and he's guarded some person on a buffalo hunt and somebody got killed. What's going to happen there? And same with that guy who was selling the dangerous game licenses out of Grahamstown. He was a nature conservation government official, another corrupt one. It's, again, if you know the right people in the right places, you pay them off enough and you're going to get what you need. But he was actually going to the point where he was selling buffalo licenses for professional hunters. Where the hell have you ever heard that there's a PH who is registered for buffalo only? It's a dangerous animal regardless. You can't just be registered as a dangerous game buffalo hunter. You dangerous game. Elephant, lion, leopard, croc, rhino, hippo. You know what I mean? You can't be registered for one. How the hell does that work? And he was doing that. He was selling and signing off. So there is a court case that's happening. I don't know how far it is now. The last I heard from the nature conservation lady who's dealing with it, there is a big court case that's happening regarding that. It'll be interesting to see what they're going to do about all the licenses that they issued 2 professional hunters at Dangerous Game Oaks in the time period that he was there. That is going to be interesting. If the shit hits the fan and they pull, you're gonna see a lot of guys who are gonna lose their licenses.
That's the problem I see too, and it's not just Dangerous Game. I look on social media, right, and I follow all these different Africa groups now, which there's several dozen of, and I see people and they're happy and they're posting photos, and I'm looking at these and I'll use air quotes, trophies,
Yeah,
and their photo with their PH, and they're so proud of this, 14-inch Impala, and I look at their pH and like there's still milk dripping off this kid's lip. Like I don't ever want to hunt somebody like that. I have no problem with them coming up and learning under a seasoned professional.
yeah.
But for my trip of a lifetime, I don't want to rely on that kid over there.
Yeah.
And then especially to get because your buddies, especially if you've got people that have been before. I'm not going to church it up to my buddy and say, oh, yeah, that's a fantastic trophy. I'm going to say, did you shoot that as a cold? Did they give it to you for free? Why did you shoot that animal? Kind of thing.
So when I started out, there's this whole thing, and I'm sure you guys have visitors. It's like PHs will talk about school fees, that they've had to pay school fees before. So the school fees thing came about was when a PH the outfitter would make the PH pay, and the client got to shoot another trophy. And we had to not shoot below minimum requirements of certain species. So, obviously you've got your book measurements where it's Roland Award and so on and so forth. But the outfitters normally would say, okay, minimum for you oaks to shoot a kudu is going to be a 45-inch pool. Anything out of 45 inches, dude, you're paying for it. So if you can't call a 45-inch pool, don't shoot the damn thing. Make sure that it's over 45, because if it's under 45, and that was what it was like for me when I started out. I remember shitting myself, shooting my first kudu bull with a client, and getting it to the skinning shed, taking photos. It was a beautiful big bull. But I was stressing my ass off that my bull didn't make the minimum requirements of the outfitter, because he would have walked in there, cut up the damn cape, and told me to hunt another one with my client. And lucky for me, the bull was 46.5 inches, and a beautiful Eastern Cape bull for the area we hunted in. But what's happened over the years as well, and you got shady PHs that can't call stuff. You've got the outfitters that have overhunted their areas. They refuse to go out and go and hunt elsewhere or pay for quality animals elsewhere. So they pressure their young PHs into shooting inferior shit. So they are told they may not go and shoot an impala next door where it's 26 inches. They have to hunt one here. And the PH himself, who's been hunting the whole season there, knows there's only a 12-inch impala. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, the PH is going to shoot the impala with the client because he wants his tip at the end of it. He doesn't want his client to go home without an impala. But the problem is where the bullshit comes in. Don't tell your client he shot a massive trophy. Tell him this is all we've got. So, but that's where the spinelessness or the I can say the young PHs can't go to a client who's much older than them and say, hey, this is not the quality of trophy that we're looking for, or go to the outfitter and say, shit, there's nothing left here. And I think that's where a big problem comes in the industry.
What would you say to people, let's say it was my first time or Mike's first time going to South Africa, and we wanted quality animals. Now, I'll preface this. Well, we're neither he or I are the type that are going to say, hey, listen, it's going to be gold medal or nothing, but we wanted quality, mature animals. How do you decipher that sea of outfitters that exists in South Africa to know that you're actually booking with somebody that's reliable, going to give you the experience you're looking for, and those top quality trophies? How do you know? Because everybody puts on a great website, has a great Facebook page. How do you know who's not?
That is always the trick question. How do you vet your outfitter and what he's going to be selling you? So that's where I came back around to where I started my podcast, because it's all about the truth and nothing but the truth. Shit, I've been told by older outfitters and PHs, I'm too honest for the industry, because it's all about smoke and mirrors and bullshitting the client until he gets home and you've got your paycheck, and I'm not for that. So me personally, I would stay away from the package deals, because a package deal doesn't necessarily mean it's a trophy deal. All right. So the outfitters that will dish you out a trophy animal list to say that is my price, and you'll see on there that he's got buffalo at 15,000 US dollars without a day fee, and he's got kudu at $3,000, and it's not in a package. You must remember, a package deal is a massive reduced rate to entice you to book, and in that, it doesn't stipulate that it is a trophy. It'll be a trophy on their property, but it's not an actual trophy. So that's one thing that I would say to guys, just look out for. And I would go more along the lines like the model that I do. I don't book a lot of clients, but I sell a day fee, and I'll quote you on the animals, because I know if you tell me you want to hunt a kudu, a bushbuck, and this, I'm going to take you to the best properties available to me to hunt those trophies. And at the end of the day, if I don't shoot that animal with you, you don't pay. You don't pay for the animal. Where a package, you don't get refunded, but if you don't shoot it. If you don't see it or you've missed it a number of times, you pay the full package rate. You get a certain number of months to come back and try and complete it. But you've got to book another whole safari. And on that safari, you get to shoot the animals that you didn't harvest in the first one. Where if you hunt on a day rate and you only pay for your trophies at the end of it, you know you're going to be paying for the quality animals that you hunted. So that's kind of what I would suggest, and especially bow hunters. That is normally my go-to for guys wanting to come hunt with a bow. You're limited in the number of days that you're hunting, so make sure that you have the time to hunt and not rush through everything, and rather go home with one or two species than try and whack out a package with 10. Because if you're going to try and whack out a package with 10, I guarantee you're going to go home with 5 mediocre animals. You might as well just come and go home with 3 quality animals than try and hunt a package. So, yeah, that would be my best advice for anyone wanting to come and book. But because, as you say, on social media and the websites, we always show our best animals. We'll always put our best trophies up there. But you must remember, those animals are also for once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. For example, this year, I had old Tim who won a hunt with me, and he came back and hunted his second trip. We went after buff. That was a hell of an experience on its own. But this man had the worst buck fever that you could ever find on a person on a kudu. His first trip out, he missed 2 kudu, massive big bulls. This trip out, he wounded 2 bulls. The first bull I couldn't get. We chased it for 27 kilometers before we ran out of blood, and we couldn't get it. But his second bull, where I managed to get a deal for him, he shot my best bull to date that I've hunted in the Eastern Cape, a true Eastern Cape kudu, not an introduced kudu, of 56.5 inches. So, and he came out and hunted on that day rate package. Look, he lost an animal, so obviously that's a paid for trophy, but he realized he had enough in the budget to go after a second one. So to me, that's a better way of doing a trip than going, oh shit, I'm done and dusted. Now I must, think of paying full trophy price on another animal. So yeah, that's the best advice I could give to anyone booking.
I definitely agree with the package thing. I'm not a package guy, and one of the things I see advertised all over these groups is I'll see a 5 to 7 animal package with 5 hunting days. That should be a giant red flag right from the get go, because especially in some of these places that's thick and that's hard, that there's no guarantee you're going to get any of those animals unless to begin with.
And if you want quality.
And that's the other thing. If you want a quality trophy, if you want a representative of the species, it's doable. You could do it. You could just go to whacking and stacking and okay, fine. But if you're out for quality, and then packages aren't set up for that. It's for people to get there and squeeze the trigger. But with that said, right? So, I'm looking at a package that's, 5 to 7 animals for 5 days. The amount of time required to chase those animals and hunt them to get the quality animal, you can't do that in 5 days.
Yeah. So you said it there, representative species. If you're going to hunt a package, it's going to be a representative species animal within that package. And so I hunted for an outfitter years ago where they had sold the package, right? So and that was the big thing. We had to hunt a 7-day, 5 animals. 5 animals is always the go-to. Kudu, impala, springbok, blesbuck, and a bushbuck. A bushbuck's a pain in the ass of the package. That should never be on a damn package. I don't care what anyone says. So he would sell this hunt. Oh, it was actually a warthog, not a bushbuck, a warthog. So you've got to go and hunt these animals. Now you'll have 2 clients. So now you've got to double up on the animals. You always find that one client's going to shoot a 40-inch kudu bull, and the other guy's going to get himself a 50-inch bull. It's just opportunity. So in his package, you could shoot exceptional animals. The PHs weren't limited to say, okay, you must shoot under a certain inch. It was a trophy kudu bull or a kudu bull, mature kudu bull. And then the guys would shoot mature this, mature that. Obviously, towards the end of the year, where you've banged out 100 of these packages, me, myself, as a PH, you imagine what the quotas are looking like on this Oaks property to see what the animals are going to be like, what's left, And he'd have clients come in and go, right, okay, look, I didn't shoot a kudu, but can I trade it for a gemsbuck? Because on the trophy price list, the kudu and the gemsbuck are the exact same price. But he couldn't get fair trade because he'd only get $1,000 of his $1,800 animal if he wanted to trade to shoot the gemsbuck, and he had to pay in the rest. And that's how that outfitter ran his operation, because the package deal was absolutely discounted. So you couldn't trade like for like, even though they were the same on a trophy price list. So again, we were also put under pressure where I remember at the time we were hunting Cabela's packages. The Cabela's package at this one place was 10 trophy animals per client, and we had 10 days to hunt it. It was 20 species from kudu right down to darker. It was black and common springbuck. It was one of the 3 hartebeest, blue, red, or black, and then it was a bushbuck, kudu. It was a bunch of animals, and we had to bang this out in 10 days for 2 clients. And you must understand, when the pH is under that amount of pressure, you'll start seeing the cracks, and you'll start seeing the shit that comes into the salting shed. Where if you had 2 clients over 10 days, you could actually hunt specific animals accordingly and actually turn down animals where you've heard the saying, I'm sure, on one of your safaris. You're glassing with your pH and he glasses up a kudu bull. And he'll look at you and go and say, that's not big enough. But he will be big enough on the last day. But if he's not big enough on the first day, he's sure shit not big enough on the last day. So you don't ever want to get yourself into that position. And I do think a lot of it comes around pressures from outfitters, making and PHs chasing their tip to try and make sure they shoot the package and not quality.
Well, on that same thought pattern, what do you think about? There's this practice, and it's not just consolidated to South Africa. It's been coined put and take or drop and shoot, where an outfitter will bring in between groups, they'll bring in more animals to replenish the stock. And, essentially the trailer leaves, the hunters go out and they're shooting the ones that come off the trailer. All right, yeah. What's your thought about that?
Look, I've no problem with putting and taking on a ranch as long as it's done correctly and done way prior to any client arriving on a property. I've hunted at places where the outfitter woke me up and said, I must go offload the truck with a truckload of gemsbuck because there are gemsbuck being offloaded that night for the clients the next day. And I looked at the oak and I was like, I'm here to PH. I'm not here to, hence the reason I don't hunt there anymore. Because I am confident enough to turn around and tell those oaks right off. It doesn't work for me in that favor. But if you're going to stock your farm at the end of the season or at the beginning of the season, and the animals have had enough ample time to get to know their terrain, to establish their little zones and become part of the land as such, it's the only way we can hunt the numbers we hunt with clients. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to be hunting out of self-sustaining herds, you are going to be limited to the number of quota. And if you're not going to reintroduce, you're going to shoot out your pool of animals. And hence the reason with the private ranches and CAEs, you actually play God on the property with the conservation side of things. So you've got to be very careful of what you take and how you reintroduce to make sure that that ecosystem stays balanced. And that's the big thing, it's balance. And we all know this is an industry where we got to make money. We all got to make livelihoods from your PHs, your trackers, your everything. It's super important for the outfitter to book the hunts, to make the rest of the chain have a lifestyle and a living. But him as the outfitter or the landowner himself need to know what their quotas are. If they don't have quotas there, they've got to go to get them elsewhere. That's why myself, I only hunt a few number of animals here on my dad's ranch, but I've got other properties that I hunt out to. So to answer the question, I really don't have a problem with put and take, but it's got to be done correctly. Don't offload the thing now and expect it to be shot tomorrow, because that's completely unethical.
What do you say about the outfitters? You know, Mike, you've been to SCI, you've been to, Great American Outdoor Show. I've watched out. I mean, there's outfitters there that have, you'll talk to them one day and they have 10 kudu for next year on quota. And then, 3 days later, they just sold 30 kudu hunts. Well, they know they've sold more than they can sustain. You're bringing in or you're outsourcing and then you end up driving. And there's also those outfitters that swear, oh, we don't participate in put and take. Everything we take is 100% sourced on this ranch. It's a self-sustaining herd. But I'm looking at them like, but you just book 30 groups a year. How unless you have several million hectares, how in the is that possible?
There's not an outfitter in South Africa, I can tell you now, that doesn't hunt out or introduce species. If he's telling you he doesn't leave his property and he hunts all 200, 300 clients a year, he's talking the biggest load of shit. I know some of the biggest outfitters in the Eastern Cape that run excellent properties, and they've got land that is 150,000 acres, and they still let their PHs travel to shoot animals off the ranch. Because you can't go pressurize even 150 acres all year and expect to shoot all the quality trophies that you're wanting with the number of clients that you're booking. Because here's a perfect example of it. Guys who have got privately owned land of that size book a hell of a lot of clients. So they've got to make their business run to cover those running expenses to have those properties and stuff. Yes, they are going to shoot as much as possible on their properties. But when it gets to the point where they are getting to the end of their quota that was allocated for the season, they will hunt out and then look at reintroducing the next year, buying a thing. Because at the end of the day, you've got obviously in the hunting industry, we've obviously got the hunting outfitters and the game farmers. Then you've got the wildlife ranchers who are a completely different ballgame to the rest of us that are breeding these exceptional monster trophies, and they've got excess game that they have to get rid of because their breeding areas are getting too small. So the outfitters go and buy those animals and buy that genetics and reintroduce them. But if you're doing it properly, then there's no issue. But if you're offloading the damn thing with a big red tag in its here, and you drive down the road and your client shoots it the next day, you got to have a good look at yourself in the mirror and say, are you a conservationist, or are you just here for the good old-fashioned dollarity and trying to make as much money out of your client as possible?
Right. You had something you wanted to say there.
I forgot. You guys. I mean, we've been. I mean, I agree with a lot of it, but I mean, we've been to some really, really good places. And we've been to, some places that you don't feel like they're breeding animals in, right? Yeah. We won't name any names.
I've seen the trucks dropping off. There's a place in Perth, so I know.
But me, I've been there and I felt like, oh my gosh, this is all totally free range shit. There's, they're not dropping shit off and fair day here to go shoot. Yeah. So it's like I've been on both sides because I have been in places where it's like, you see the fence and you say, okay, well, there's the animal. So it's like, so I'm on both sides of the spectrum, I guess I should say.
And some people, you know, and for some people that come over, they don't give a shit about fence. They're just looking to whack and sack, and they don't give a flying where they shoot it from. You know, you can that one's in a 20 hectare lucerne paddock that got in there and we can't get it out. Let's go shoot that animal. All right.
Yeah. So then call it what it is. Killing. It's not hunting. Don't go bullshit everyone when you get back home. You hunted this massive kudu and it's, you know, and you actually shot it in a 100-hectare camp. You know what I mean? With a bow and a spotlight. And then tell everyone you shot a 50-inch bull, walk and stalk with your fucking bow. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen that rubbish. You know, and those are the outfitters that give the rest of us an absolutely shitty name. You know, and then there's this thing that you also hear that, okay, we're on a high-fenced CAE game ranch. The law states we can hunt with any means. We can hunt with spotlights. We can do this. We can do that. You know, it's not illegal. You can shoot off the back of the truck. The law states in South Africa, if you're hunting, you may not shoot off the back of a pickup. You have to be 250 meters away from your truck to shoot your animal. You know, we've all been in a situation where you hop out the truck and, oh shit, there's the kudu running up the mountain and you shoot it. You know, so that's where you're looking at the ethics of things and people's morals and belief in what hunting actually is, I think. And yeah, if you're going to be happy with shooting it in a pen, call it that you shot it in a pen. Yeah, but don't go and say, yeah, I went hunting.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen it happen both ways, and yeah, and that goes back to, you know, those outfitters, right? If you're running a turnstile operation and each client's stacking up, you know, 10, 15, 20 animals, and then the next group comes in and they're doing the same thing, and they're dropping off, they have to. And, you know, I think and I'm gonna warp this a little bit in that. So I think, you know, from a client perspective, how important is it to engage and to have the client likewise engage with his potential outfitter prior to going over, in that, hey, what experience are you looking for? What exactly do you want out of this trip? You know, what's your bucket list? You know, how does that look to you? How do you want to hunt? What's your preferred method of hunting? How important is that communication prior to the hunt?
Or are you just paying for a trophy, or are you going to have a good memory that you'll never forget, right? Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it's I had a really good memory that I'll never forget, right? With taking my daughter there. And there was a lot of good trophies taken, obviously, but at that point in time, I get two shits. So it's like, do you just want to go there and you want to pay $100,000 for the world's biggest kudu, or do you just want to have a great memory with something that you'll cherish for the rest of your life by looking at them on your wall, right? So,
well, yeah. So Wayne, from an outfitter's perspective, though, how important is that client communication prior to the hunt?
No, that's absolute key. You've got to ask the questions, and don't be scared to ask the questions. It's the same as asking about the tips and how things are going to run. You know, don't get there and expect to ask the question when you get there. Ask them before you come. So myself as an outfitter, I've just booked 2 guys now that are coming next year. And my key thing is, from asking the guys, what is your wish list? Have you ever hunted Africa first and foremost? What has your experience been on? And if you're wanting to share, tell me what outfitter you hunted with, because then straight off the bat, I can tell you if you love that outfitter's style of hunting, and you know you think go back and book there again, because my style might not be for you. But I'm just an honest outfitter. I'll be dead honest with you and say, this is my style. These are the things I can cater for. Have you got any medical conditions? Because that's a key thing that outfitters need to know. And the other key thing is the outfitter needs to share the information with the PH. So, for example, if you've got a guy that's come out and has had a triple heart bypass, you know, as a PH, we need to know that you've had a triple heart bypass, and I don't walk you up and a mountain to 7,000 feet above sea level and kill you halfway up there while we're trying to hunt kudu. Then I will take you and I hunt you according. So if you've got an outfitter worth his freaking bag of salt, he will be able to market and pick the pH according to the client's abilities and pick the properties according to the client's abilities. So spot and stalk vehicle hunt will cater better to an elderly gentleman who isn't fit, who may have had a hip replacement or knee op or whatever, but tell your outfitter you've had those things. Barring the young 40, 50-year-old guy who's still avidly fit and wants to hike mountains. So you as an outfitter need to know these things from the clients. The clients need to ask the questions and we can accommodate accordingly. So it's super important. Ask the questions.
Yeah, and I think that transparency and that relationship you build ahead of time, speaks volumes, and you can really make or break the more. And this is for me personally, the more you share with your outfitter prior to the trip, the better experience you're going to have. Yeah. And that's my personal take.
Communication, do your due diligence, know what your wants and needs are.
Yeah. And then I want to touch just one thing you mentioned. There are several people. I know several people that have been to Africa, South Africa, call it, half a dozen times or more over the last decade. And I get into conversations with people about, their outfitter. And I'm like, okay, well, what outfitters have you hunted with? And they say, oh no, I've only ever hunted with my outfitter. I'm like, are you really? I've always had an issue with it. So everybody knows I hunt with several outfitters. We go and hunt with new outfitters every year. Not that I don't like some of the outfitters I've hunted with, but I want to experience a new place, a new outfitter. And for me, the only way to do that is I got to change things up. Now, that doesn't mean I still don't go back to some of those, outfitters that showed me a great time and those PHs that were great to me. I enjoy doing that. I have a hard time with people that say, oh, no, we're only hunting with this guy, or I've never hunted with everybody else because this guy showed me a great time. Well, what he showed you as a great time may be on a letter score. That may be a C experience, where this guy down the road or in a different province can show you an A time, and you're going to be like, oh, my God, I just wasted all of these years hunting with one guy because I thought it was the end-all, be-all. You have no idea. I mean, you can have the best time in your life if you switched it up. Try it. What's it going to hurt? I mean, people that go there to the same camp and the same, 2,000 hectare, farm every fucking year in Limpopo, and they think they've hunted South Africa. No, you haven't. You haven't. You have no idea how things work and what else is out there available.
Yeah. So with that, I say to people, try other outfitters. You know what I mean? You've got to experience the Eastern Cape, and every outfitter is going to show you the best of what they have on offer. And each guy they'll fit your mold differently, and the problem with clients and outfitters and shit like that is there's this stigma in the hunting industry that when you book a client, he belongs to you in amongst the outfitters. So it's like, I own that client. You don't own that fucking person at all. So he must go and experience what he needs to.
Yeah. Social media nowadays, you should be able to, you should know what you're looking for when you go there, right? You should know what kind of quality animal you're looking for, what's your budget, what are you wanting to do? So, it's not just your guys' responsibility. Yes, it is great that you guys say, hey, we need to know what your wants and needs are. What are you looking for? But also as a newbie coming over there, you need to know, do your research, right? The internet's there. Watch videos, watch different people. Get some knowledge and know what you're looking for, right?
But in saying that, I know, Sean, you got on well with one of your PHs, harness, and you go everywhere with harness. Okay. That's another nice way of looking at it. But then an outfitter will go and take it out on that PH to say that they stole the client. So at the end of the day, every client wants a different experience. So like now, I'm a one-man show. I hunt myself on my own outfit, my own PH. Tim and I have got such a great relationship now. He's hunted with me twice. He wants to come back and hunt again. I'm looking at taking him to hunt elsewhere now. We're going to carry on with his dangerous game adventure, and the two of us are going to finish his dangerous game. We might be old and grey by the time we've done it, but I'm going to be there. So I'll organize the hunts and go hunt elsewhere with him and be the guard. I might not be the licensed guard for that area, but I'll be one of the guards on the hunt. And clients need to experience the rest of Africa. If you are a very much of a safety, I know those people, they'll be there and stuff like that, and you want to stick with them and stay with them, by all means do that. But you do need to experience, if you're an adventurer, experience the Eastern Cape, experience South Africa. Go hunt in the Northern Cape and Limpopo and places like that. You'll eventually find the area that you prefer hunting in. And then even if you really want to, stretch out and start hunting into Africa. I myself have never hunted into Africa. I'm a South African boy. I want to stretch out. So if I've got a client that is keen to go hunt leopard in freaking Tanzania, I'm going to try and organize my best, my damnedest to go and be part of that adventure and experience. And guys must go and hunt. If he doesn't want to do it with me and he wants to book with that outfitter specifically and try out a new PH, thumbs up to him. We can't hold clients on a noose for the rest of their lives. We love our clients coming back because we do like the income, and we like seeing new friends, and they become part of the family and part of the team. But if they want to go and experience something else, by all means, go and do it. Don't be scared to do it.
Yeah, and then that was perfect too. The honest thing with me, I've developed a relationship with a PH that I'd say it was more of a friendship, than a PH hunter relationship, and I trust him. But because of that, he organizes these trips now where, we've hunted in every province in South Africa. He's also hunted with me in Namibia. He's not licensed to hunt in Namibia, but he comes along and we've made memories and had great experiences. And he's, like I said, he sorted it. He's put the trips together. We've hunted with other outfitters in other places and stayed at different lodges, but he's always been there, with me. And it's absolutely fantastic. And that's the takeaway from that. I think, and I caught shit about it last time I said this in a podcast. I think the relationship between the client and the PH is more important than the relationship between the client and the outfitter. Now, the outfitters hate to hear that shit because they're your outfitter and you brought they're there because of them, and that PH is nothing. He's replaced. You spend every waking second with your PH when you're on safari, period. That outfitter doesn't pick you up from the airport. That outfitter doesn't sit with you in a boma over a water hole for 14 hours a day. That outfitter isn't there when you harvest your first African species and shares that moment with you. And sometimes you may not even see the actual outfitter when you're at camp. They're just not physically in there. So there's this person that you've got a name. You've never seen him, never met him in person, but somehow you have to be loyal to that outfitter. I'm telling you right now, that. If that PH has gone out of his way and show you a great time and you're comfortable with him, talk to your PH about other experiences that are possible. Now, if he works exclusively for that outfitter, he will tell you, I only work for this outfitter, but if you really want to go do something with me, my outfitter can accommodate that and let us book it for you.
Yeah. That's the thing. So going back to what you said about your PH is the person that you know throughout your safari. So I hunted for a specific company where the 2 years I hunted there for them exclusively, one, maybe two of my clients met the outfitter. I did all the paperwork. I organized all the permits. I organized the properties we hunted on. And this outfitter pushed it to the point where if you wanted to work for him, you had to have your own land to hunt on. So outer-lying properties to go and hunt the trophies. And I sat back and I looked at this like, I'm running the operation there. I'm picking up the client. I'm hunting all these animals. I'm shooting extra animals. I'm making him all the money. And he can't even have one freaking meal with the guy who booked with him and actually get to know who, the outfit is. And I'm like, why the hell am I doing this? I'd rather just go on my own, because all the properties that I hunt on are my properties first and foremost. And I'm the only one I'm the face of the company. And it goes to show as well, when you're walking around those shows and going to all those booths, and the person you meet, that you make a relationship, standing there, shaking his hand, talking a bit of shit, having a coffee with him, talking about hunting and stuff, and you book with him to hunt, you are not guaranteed to hunt with that professional hunter or outfitter that's sitting there at that booth in that show venue. You'll land here, and some little pitty is going to be standing at the thing with his fellies on and his shorts and picking you up. But this I promised that you'd be hunting with him. And I saw that firsthand. I picked up a client, and the guy said, "Well, who are you?" I said, "No, well, I'm your PH." "No, well, I'm booked with so and so." I said, "Well, he's in camp. You can have the conversation with him when we get there, because he's just picked up a client 2 days ago and he's booked with him." Where he stood and promised the guy at the show, "You will be hunting with me if you book. Sign here on the dotted line. I'll take your deposit now." And the poor oak's flown 16 hours, and I'm the PH. Needless to say, we're great mates now. He had a hell of a hunt with me, but he was pissed off because were booked specifically to hunt with the dude that he spoke to in the booth. So
I had that's roughly the story I had how I met Hannes.
Yeah.
Hunted with an outfitter, and I had hunted with this PH twice before, and everything was set up. We were coming in. It was I think it was a 14 hunt. It was a pretty substantial hunt. It wasn't a short in and out. Yeah. And right before within like 2 days before I got there, he phones me on WhatsApp and says, "Listen, we had a scheduling screw up. I'm not going to be able to PH for you. I've got this other group and I'm double booked. Yeah. I'm really sorry. What other PH that you've met, because you've been with us several times, would you like to hunt with, and we'll make it happen?" Yeah. So at the time I asked my wife, "Hey, you want to hunt with?" And she gave us a name. We said, "That person, yep, no problem. That's what it's going to be." And we get to camp and we're sitting down having lunch. And Mike Sumner was with us, and Jess and Toby. We're sitting there having lunch, right? And these two young guys are just sitting there at lunch with us having a meal. And we get to talking about the end of the meal. We're like, "Yeah, so by the way, when is so-and-so going to get here?" And they're like, "What do you, no, that's my PH. I'm waiting on the go line." Like, "No, sir, I'm your PH. Well, that person across the table that had to explain that to me, who instantly caught my wrath because I was pissed off, was Hannes.
Yeah.
Now, I ended up seeing several PHs that trip in front of God and everybody because they lied to me, and I hated that shit. But that's how I met Hannes. And you know what? That's the best trip I ever had. And I met somebody that otherwise I never met. And since then, we've hunted for years together in all these different provinces and different countries. And I made that relationship because of a PH that did some backhand. And come to find out, too, the PH didn't already have something booked. There was another client coming in from Spain, these guys that'll go shoot 10 buffalo a piece, and he wanted to hunt with them because the tip was going to be better. Yeah. That's why it wasn't that shit. It was total horseshit. Because of that, the favorite PH I've ever hunted with is Hannes, and I keep hunting with Hannes. And because of like I said, otherwise I'd have never met the guy.
Yeah.
And I'd have never known that they were out there.
It was meant to be. It was meant to be. Look at it that way. But yeah. Like I say, I've got a great relationship with that guy, and he was absolutely fuming. You could see the smoke coming out his ears, and he was promised a specific PH, and he didn't get him.
First timer, you don't have to worry about that. You're not going to know your PH, and most everybody's going to show you a good time. Especially a first time hunter to South Africa, you're going to have a good time. You can hunt with the shittiest out there in South Africa, and you're going to have a good time. That's just the country. You're just. Yeah, you're going to have a good time. And let's just go, since we're talking, we've talked through the PH thing, we've talked through the outfitter thing. Let's go back to first-time hunters because it's important. We put out a lot of content for first-time hunters going to South Africa. We talk about tipping. We talk about packing. It's a lot of stuff we talk about that people don't want to have conversations about. So with that in mind, what's the biggest mistake a first-time hunter makes when they come to South Africa?
What's the first mistake? There are a couple. Arriving without binoculars is one. Buying a new rifle and he hasn't tried and tested it and got it and know it before he comes out on a safari that he spent thousands of dollars for. I have a great story with this one. A guy came out, and it was at the time when the short mags were very popular, the 300 short mags and 270 short mags. And he came out with a 270 short mag, and I think it had if I'm not mistaken, a Pentex scope on it. I know Pentex makes digital cameras or whatever. I don't know, made rifle scopes. So we start the trip, shoots really well, it's accurate, shoots thing. Day 2, Africa's supposed to be dry, and you can't predict the weather on these safaris, and we got pissed wet. Day 3, he couldn't even see through his rifle scope, and it was milked up like a baby's bottle. That he finished the rest of the trip shooting with my old 30-06 and finished his safari. I lent him my rifle, and I said to him, but this is a brand new rifle, did you not test the scope out? Did you not? Because you guys hunt in snow and rain and that type of shit. We're not, accustomed to that. The last few years, it's been a bit crazy. And he said, no, I've never tested it. I bought it. I shot at the range. We developed a load, and I brought it hunting. And I said, well, there goes your safari absolutely pear-shaped because your rifle scope is no good because you never tested before. I said, what do you shoot with that? No, I have an old Remington 700 that I, 7mm. I said, that's the rifle you should have brought with. So I always say to the guys, it's great having a new rifle. I've got no issues with a new rifle. But make sure you've done your damn homework. Ammunition, shooting it and being comfortable, and making sure that the optics can withstand any weather, because there's nothing worse than not being able to use your tools on a safari that you've spent thousands of dollars on and wanting that experience, and then all of a sudden having to hire an outfitter's rifle, or which would be your professional hunter's rifle, and having that extra bill if you've just done a bit more homework at home.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's one that I don't honestly think about very often, but because we have good equipment. I'll tell you the one that gets me, right, with these groups we take. When we put together these videos, these packing videos, the one thing I always see people do, they pack way too much shit. They're going on a 7-day safari, and they packed enough outfits in their bags to facilitate 30 days in Kenya or something without the that thing. You see it, and these are people that we brought on groups. You've seen it too, right? When we get to the baggage claim, after I've specifically, here's your packing list. You don't need anything more than this, but there are some items in here that are optional that you really don't need. But if shit happens, you got them. All of it can be fit in one bag. Yeah. One bag.
You could literally come with a carry-on.
Yeah. You can. You absolutely. If you wear your hunting boots on the plane, get away with a carry-on.
You need 3 changes of clothes. That's about it. The one that you're wearing and 2 hunting outfits. You don't need 25 hunting outfits. You don't need 25 pairs of jocks when you come here. Every place that you will hunt, or I should say most of them, will do your laundry every day. So that's that outfit you wore the day before. You just got to make sure that you've got something for a day where it's rainy and your laundry doesn't dry. So always have that one extra thing. And definitely that's the biggest thing. People pack way too much. They come with these massive cases where they could have fitted and rolled up 3 outfits in a carry-on and just brought their rifle and
in the back.
Yeah, and have their backpack.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And listen, I didn't start, my career going to Africa knowing this. I learned this over I was guilty of it, right? My first several trips, I overpacked, and not even several. I mean, I was still overpacking at trip 6 and trip 7. And over the years, I started, whittling down what was absolutely necessary, what without. And then I had an issue last year where I had a pair of gym greens that I'd been wearing for like 3 or 4 safaris that I ended up just shredding on like the second day of the safari. And I'm like, mother. Well, fortunately, we were to be going to the Karoo, so we just went to Bloemfontein at Safari and Outdoors, and I bought a brand new pair of these that I actually like better than the gym greens. That shit is available to people. They don't understand that. So in the outfitter, in the PH, are normally some backup gear if shit happens. You don't have to pack 5 sets of hunting boots. You don't have to pack 15 layers of thermals and 4 different jackets. You don't need all that shit. You really don't. Like 3 outfits, like you said, that's it. You got your travel day. You're wearing this where you're wearing that day, that's also what you're wearing home, right? That's so be your leisure time, really wear. You don't need all that shit. And frankly, people that what they need to understand is, you're not coming home. This isn't an Ernest Hemingway style safari experience where you're going to go hunt all day. Then you're going to go back to the lodge and you're going to shower and get clean. Then you're wearing a suit and tie to dinner that night. If you want that experience, there are some outfitters that will cater to that, but that's not a true hunting experience. And most outfitters aren't going to do that. Most people, listen, if your PH doesn't go take a shower before dinner and he's still wearing his hunting clothes, why the do you need to go get changed up and get all fancied up? Nobody there gives up flying what you're wearing. Zero. None.
Exactly.
And you don't even I see these people that go out and they're going to spend all this money on, kudu, First Flight, Sitka, all this gear, right? These boots, like these crispy boots that are, $500 US a pair and shit like that. They're fucking horrible for that. They don't work for fucking shit. They look like ski boots, and you're the loudest motherfucker in the goddamn bush. Period. I can hear you 2 mountaintops away, stomping through that shit.
And your PH, you'll get there, is going to be wearing a pair of khaki shorts and a green shirt and some fellies.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, there's some fucking, he's wearing techies too. I'm like, well, you wearing tennis? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, I guess I didn't need all this shit.
Yeah, a pair of Solomons is my favorite pair of shoe to hunt in. Comfortable and quiet.
Comfortable and quiet. That's, for footwear especially. And then I see people, whether it's kudu or Sitka, they're bringing this shit over that wasn't designed to hunt in that environment. Like if you walk, all you hear is that shh because your fucking pant legs are rubbing. Guess what? The animals that you're hunting can hear you fucking coming from a mile away. They know you're going to be there. Just because some influencer on social media can look good and took a fucking photo, somewhere on safari in Africa wearing that doesn't mean it's worth a.
Nah, not at all.
Go to safari stores if you don't have shit and go buy yourself a pair of, what is it? Johnson's workwear? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I tore the asshole out of a pair of pants last year and I needed a new pair of pants. So we stopped there and I got me a pair of Johnsons. I still wear them. Fine.
Client's bag went missing for 3 days. That was our first stop. I took him in there, bought himself 2 pairs of pants, 2 shirts, some underwear, boxer underwear, and socks. He actually wore that shit the whole of his safaris. When his bag arrived, he wasn't interested in the stuff in his bag.
Ended up liking it better too, probably.
Yeah. He says the quality was better.
It definitely, well, that's a thing too. Mike brought over, we hunt with, especially deer season here at this part of the state, or in this part of the U.S. and Kentucky, Ohio. We like Sitka gear, or not Sitka, excuse me. We actually don't like that at all. First Light stuff for later season when it gets cold and they make underwear. And it works fine here. Mike brought that shit to Africa his first trip and found out in about 2 hours of the first day.
It's like 2 minutes.
That shit ain't going to hold up. So he has this brand new First Light outfit, right?
Yeah.
And that he's used here deer hunted with. His first morning out, I see him at lunch and it's shredded.
Holes in the back of it.
Gone.
Yeah, you look like you're carrying freaking white snow all over you. He's ripped it to shit.
Yeah, and people ask, well, how do you know what to bring? Look at what your PH wears. If PH is wearing something, you can take that as it's embedded that. If that's what they're wearing, wear the same they're wearing, because they do it, they don't do it every day, but for 6 months out of the year, that's what they're doing day in and day out. It's got to work and it's got to hold up.
So I laugh. I sent you a photo of Zwei and I back in the day when we started hunting together. And that's a picture a client took of myself and my old dog and Zwei when we were much younger and much fitter. And I was wearing a two-tone farm shirt and a pair of blue jeans. And the only piece of camo that I owned was a hat that a client gave me because he said, you need a piece of camo in your wardrobe. That's it. I hunted in that blue denim and two-tone shirt for years. That was my go-to because the shit's last. It works in the bush. And, everything's got thorns and hooks on it and a pair of denim jeans. If they're soft and you've worn them and they're comfortable, you'll do just fine. Hunting here with them.
Well, and I'll say the people watching too, you don't have to go out and spend $2,000 on hunting clothes before you go. If you've got, neutral cargo pants and neutral tops and stuff like that are already worn in and they're comfortable, use that. You don't need camo. I would say, if you're going to spot, it helps a little bit kind of thing, but you don't have to have that shit. Now, Are you going to wear a white hat and a white shirt out? Zero. No. Bad fuck. Yeah, we actually did that by mistake once. You want to tell a story? I'll tell a story. So we were switching camps. We were hunting with Hannes and Chris, and we'd already done, I want to say 7 or 10 days. So we were leaving the East Cape and we were going to the Karoo. And in between, Mike had a black Impala on his list that he really wanted. Well, the 2 sessions that we were hunting with, one of them had them, but they weren't great. But Hannes had lined up. He's like, hey, I've got this new place, got this farmer. So he's got great genetics. It's on the way. Let's stop it. But we didn't know that he planned this. So we were just going to.
I was in blue jeans and a shirt, not a white one, obviously, but just a shirt.
And same for me. I was in blue jeans, and I don't think I had a white T-shirt. Probably a Salt shirt, but we were both wearing white.
Not me. You and Chris was wearing
white Salt Lick ball caps, right? Like these things that I bring over every year. Honestly, we're going to stop here and see if we can get a black Impala. We chased these things forever. And finally, like 45, and I've got the big camera set up. I'm running the A cam. I think
Chris is on the other.
Chris is running B cam for me. And we could not figure out, we're crawling and shit. I'm like, these are the most turned on Impala everywhere. They must get pressured like crazy. And like an epiphany when we realized none of us are wearing hunting gear. None of us. We're all, he's got a white T-shirt on. We have fucking white hats. I'm like, well,
you're actually running around like light bulbs.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're literally a fucking billboard in there. And Mike actually, and that turned out to be such a cool reel too. Mike and the wind was howling, you know, like it normally does there in the Cape that time of year. And it was howling. It was probably, I don't know, 30 miles an hour. I don't know what that equates to in kilometers per hour, but it had a crosswind. And we get set up on this Impala, and it's a very good ramp. Off of sticks with the wind. But we didn't have any cover, so he's the top of the 6. He had to kneel down and brace off between the 2 legs of the 6, which is fine. And Mike sends this thing, and he'd shot at it a couple of times and missed, and then finally jumped the wind, and it was something like, well, how much wind? He's like, and Hannes says, 1 Impala. I'm like, 1 Impala, and Mike lives, like an entire Impala worth of wind. So he holds off, and this Impala steadily moving, and Mike sends one like, you hear doom, whack, and the fucking Impala dumps. So we're like, oh my God, finally, we got it. Let's go get this up where it gets up and runs away, right? So we get there, and we're all looking at, and we're trying to find the bullet hole, and Hannes says, oh no, I found it. Where is it? Mike shot it in the fucking face right there and dumped it. Camera like, well, I'm like, Hannes, what do you think about that? He's like, well, it's the first time I ever seen anybody shoot a black Impala like in the face. We got it on camera. Hilarious. But we were told, I mean, I was just like the fucking billboards out there walking around with white.
No, you're actually all a bunch of light bulbs moving around there. Those Impala would have you clocked. One of the most skittish animals there are.
I asked Mike on camera, I'm like, Mike, so where are you aiming? He's like, a bit further back in that fucking face. that bullet and just,
and it wasn't no short shot either. I can't remember how much that.
500?
Yeah, it was like 500 yards.
Yeah.
So it was it was great. He shot it. It was just the windage up there. It was swirling. He was high. We were down lower, and it just was hard to get it. But he actually made a good shot. But that was just a funny story of that trip that was now, half a dozen years ago or something. But that's one of the stories we'll all be able to relive. And that's the kind of thing you do on safari. You're going to make these memories with your PHs and your outfitters. And that's the shit you're going to remember and the stories you're going to tell your buddy. And do you remember when that Impala measured? Because it didn't matter.
Yeah, no, like I said, on memory, it's like, hey, half of us were asleep in the truck, and it's like, hey, wake up, we're going to go shoot a black Impala. I'm like, oh, shit. Grab a rifle, let's go. Blue tees, T-shirts, and off we go. I think that was like a 4-hour excursion, 6-hour excursion.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never know what's around the next corner.
Well, and we ended up, it was going to be a short pit stop, like kind of vet the farm and see if we could get on something quickly. And we're supposed to be at the crew camp at, I don't know, 6 p.m. or something like that. 1,800 hours for the folks that are anal. And we ended up getting there like 02 in the morning. That's how we got through this.
It's all about the adventure.
You reached out to me it's been several months ago now.
Yeah.
And you shared a story with me that I was not familiar with, and that was of your tracker and a friend of yours, Zwei. So I don't want to tell the specifics because it's much better coming from you. So tell us the story of Zwei and kind of what led to that initial you and I hooking up and kind of trying to put something together.
So yeah, Zwei was my first tracker. Obviously, green into the industry. Check all these damn bugs. Excuse me, I'm outside. So yeah, and he's just one a hell of a tracker and skinner, and we hunted 2 or 3 seasons together before he moved on to another company because at the time I wasn't booking enough hunts. Yeah, and I've mentioned this on my podcast and for the guys that are watching. Yeah, and he unfortunately lost his leg. So we grew up together as kids. His dad worked for my dad, so I knew him really well and personally. And I reached out to you just as in I got him back hunting with me, and he is such a strong-minded, strong-willed person. He's just got so much life in him, even though the dude lost his leg nearly 10 years ago. And I thought, no, well, you guys got the podcast. Have you got any people who'd be willing to donate? And you went above and beyond, but I still don't know how to thank you. And the video you put together and the stuff that you've done and the people you've shared to, got Zwa basically his life back. The man was walking around today, yeah, while we're busy digging a hole for a swimming pool. And yeah, it's just been an absolute roller coaster, um, getting him to where he is now. We're still not there yet. We're still a very long way off of the final product. But wow, to do something like this for a great tracker. And this morning he was tracking that bushpig, and it was awesome to see him actually in the valley now with his leg that he's only had for like 3 weeks, tracking a bushpig that I screwed up on, last night. So yeah, that's why. Shit, what else can I tell you about him? It feels like I've repeated this story a hundred times. Um, so yeah, unfortunately, because of our poor medical facilities, or I should say government facilities, not medical facilities, government facilities, they literally dropped the ball, and that's the reason why he lost his leg. But I think the sadder part of the whole situation is that he was hunting for a very big company that when he got ill, they dropped him off and he was but a number. So when we linked back up again, I was like, dude, I can't leave you in this situation. You're too good to leave you like this. And hence the reason we started the Back a Buddy campaign and trying to get donations as much as we can to get the dude his life back.
Yeah, it was really cool being a part of that,
Yeah.
and being able to get other people from history and other people from South Africa to jump on board. And I think, when I put the original video together, I've reached out to, I don't know, there were 7 or 8 people, on there, and instantly everybody said yes.
Mm.
And I'm like, I was kind of surprised, honest,
Yeah.
I mean, people are busy and they're doing stuff, but everybody was just instantly, ready. And Jono jumped on it,
Mm.
and that Sarah, and just all these other people, Sue Tidwell from the States, and
Yeah.
Robbie Crow going to do it too. And then I just couldn't get his schedule right to film this little bit for me. But I mean, but everybody said yes. Nobody said
Yes.
no, and they all
Yeah.
wanted to jump on and be a part of it. And it's for me, it's a really cool thing to be a part of, because I know what trackers and skinners bring to the table in South Africa, and I know how hard those guys work.
Mm.
And they've been responsible for as many of my successes in that country as my PH. For example, Hannes with Unati
Yeah.
spots most of the shit, especially when we're hunting free range. If we're hunting kudu or something like
Mm.
that, he'll pull off and glass other valleys and look, and like, he's been so pivotal in our successes or my successes there. And those
Yeah.
guys just don't get enough credit for what they do.
No, that's very true. This is why it's got eyes that, look, I can see shit in the bush. That man's got X-ray vision. And if you've got a really, really good tracker and skinner, when they skin, it's like an art form. The guys can do a full cape on a kudu in 30 minutes type of thing, and have it all turned out and in the salt within 40 minutes. They are just a different league altogether, and they make us PHs look good. And that's just the reality. They spot the animals first. They will be the first guy to tap on the truck and go and tell you it's a big one or it's not, or oh, there's a young bull. They are just unbelievable. And like I say, the sad part for me when I hooked up with Zwei again was that he was this brilliant tracker and skinner that no one wanted to use because he had lost his leg and was sitting, living on a government grant. And the government grant that they get is 2,000 Rand as a disability grant. 2,000 Rand's like, fuck, it's not even, it's 100 and something dollars. And that's what he has to survive on every month and to pay his family, his kids he's got kids that are studying, he's got kids at school. And you can't support a family on that. And then so what happened was I actually had a tracker organized by him to come and hunt with me, and the guy dropped me last minute because trackers, if they're in the freelancing system, and they're not hunting or part of a company, so you've got all these freelance guides coming in, their trackers are also freelance. So if that PH hasn't got work for him, he's hunting for another professional hunter. He's also got to work the days to make the money. And that guy obviously got phoned by another PH and was offered more days than I was offering, so he jumped ship and went and hunted with him. And I actually started the buff hunt without a tracker, and I was like, shit, I'm going to be caping animals myself. I'm actually at that point, I couldn't give a damn. I will get through this hunt. And then the landowners where I was hunting kindly offered me their tracker and skinner for the hunt. But after that, I went back to Zwei and I said, dude, can you find me another tracker? And I went and saw him at home. And you saw in the video, he lives in a tin shack, dude. And when he was hunting with me, he was doing well. He was renting a property, but he lived in a house. And it was heartbreaking for me to see him living in that little 3x3 tin shack. And there's no floor in there. It's a carpet on the ground, and he's got his bed, and but still jovial, smiley, upbeat, full of jokes. And I looked at him and I said, dude, there's nothing wrong with you. I'm going to take you to hunt the next safari. I'll put you in a paint tin, and you can just skin with me. I'm going to take one of my farm hands who can't skin for shit, but he's plenty good to hunt with me, and we'll do that. No, the first day we were out hunting, that dude was on the truck with his crutches. When I said, well, what do you do? He says, no, drop me off here. I'm going to go up that valley. I'm like, how? No, I'm going to go up there. There's nothing wrong with me. And he'd cruise everywhere on his damn crutches. And I was like, he deserves more. This is not about, everyone is like, oh, Wayne, you're doing it as a publicity stint. And, there are those people that call shit out. I've got it on social media and crap like that. And this is not about me. It's not for me. It's to give this oak a life back and give him back his life, for him to support his family. And hence the reason I reached out to whoever I could. And you, like I said, you and your guys and your team and stuff like that have been the biggest donors of this whole thing. Old Steve, I can't thank him enough for donating the leg. Unfortunately, we couldn't use the whole thing. We could only use the knee part of it, but that is the most expensive part of the whole, setup. But going on to getting the donations, the sad part about it is there are lots of PHs out there that have used Zwei, and not one of them have put their hands in their pockets to offer 10 Rand. There are lots of outfitters that know Zwei and know his story, and none of them have done 10 Rand. There are lots of people wanting to know about Zwei and how things are going. They're all in on it, but no one's willing to give 5 Rand. And we're still a long way off. It's a 250,000 Rand project that we're in for, and I'm footing most of it now after the donations that are coming. And I'm a small fry. I'm making deals with doctors and people like that to try and get this guy to the end of it, to make sure that he's completely efficient and can do his job properly.
Yeah, and it was it's been great because Wayne sends me videos several times a week, and the first time it was right after That's why he got fitted for the leg and got wrapped. And he started to use it and he posted those videos, but he was supposed to be on crutches. Like the very next day, just walking across like for the skin show. I'm like, how in the look like that got an unbelievable drive. Like he just wants to go and do.
Yeah.
I mean, from that, so what's it been like, especially since he's got the leg now, what's it been like seeing him back out there, in the bush and working and smiling again? What's that been like?
Dude, the first couple of times I'd come around the corner and I'm seeing it's like this holy shit moment. It's, I'd be seeing him standing there on his crutch and he was quite unique. He'd use his crutch as a limb. He'd like put that stump of his on the handle of his crutch and stand and balance, and that's how he'd skin and stuff. And I'd come around the corner and he's on feet. I think the first one was that video I sent you, and he came walking across, and I'm checking out my window, and he's busy having a fat conversation with the other guy, flinging his crutch around like he's busy doing some march, in a band or parade of some sorts. Yeah, and I just had a good laugh, and I was working with him in the veld, and I came around, and they were doing some fencing. And yes, why standing on his own 2 feet, no crutches anywhere near him, and he's walking around. And this is day 2 of the man on his leg. And I said, hey, you did realize the doctor told you day 1, 1 hour, day 2, 2 hours, day 3, and so on, so we can build up that your leg gets used to it. There was no stopping that man. I actually had to tell him to take his leg off in the field and told him to sit in his butt so he could rest. But by the time I got to day 3 and day 4, I was like, I can't stop him. He's an adult. He's got to figure it out and feel the process himself. It's like a kid with a new toy and he wants to go and show it off. And I think in his mind, he had to push himself so much in those first few days because he wanted to go home because no one had seen him. People were seeing snippets that we were posting, and he wanted to go home and surprise his family. And he worked so hard at walking. And the weekend before I took him past his parents for the first time, we did a hunt. And the dude climbed a mountain with his freaking leg, and he'd only had his leg for a week. And I was like, you're not supposed to be doing that. I told you to go here. And he says, no, I'm okay, Putty. I'm going to the top. I'm going to look for the warthogs. I'm like, geez, bud, just slow down. I think that's probably been my toughest thing with him is trying to get him to just slow down. The man's running. The doctor's first words to him after he took his first step, he says, yo, this guy's going to run in a week. Yeah, and it's been an amazing journey going with him and going through the phases. Yeah, and we took him back now recently for his first checkup after. Because remember, this leg now, guys, isn't the finished product. This is just his test socket for the doctor to alter to the point where he gets his final socket, which we're hoping he's going to get January, February next year. Because the longer the doctor can keep him in the test socket, the more beneficial it's going to be for his final setup. And he went to the doctor, and it's like having a car's wheel alignment done. He was like, how's it working? So he says to the doctor, now his leg's pushing a bit. So the doctor tweaked a few things on his prosthetic around the knee joint. I don't know all the shit that's down there. I'm learning as I'm going along. And the dude literally took 3 steps after that, and he was walking completely differently. And that's unbelievable to me, that a half a turn on a screw can change the whole way a man walks. And when I took him home and his parents saw him get out the car and he left his crutches and he walked towards them at the house, that's a memory I'll never forget. His first step was unbelievable. But to see that pure joy on his parents' face and family members, he spent the week at home now, and his exact words to me was funny. He says, you swear there was a funeral happening at my house because everyone was there. He says everyone had to come and check his leg. And he says the funniest part of the whole thing was having his nephews and nieces asking him to take his shoe off to see his foot. They wanted to see what his foot looked like. And this is just going to be a story that lives with me until my child's going to learn about it and know about it. And, it's just a hell of an experience. I don't have any other words for it.
Yeah, it's been really cool to be a part of it. And, even in our a small part of, in his journey, but, especially been all these people that have reached out to help. And, Steve Cohn, obviously, and donating was huge. And, Mike with Treason reached out to help and get it taken over there, and kind of his documentation of it and flying it up front, with the pilots and stuff like that. It was so cool. And, the people from all over the world, we had the huntsman, from Australia come on and talk. But, the gist of it is, we're still not there. We're still several $1,000s away from the goal, and expenses that we cover. So, I encourage anybody watching, you go over to Wayne's page, look at African Brother Safari. You can see the progress. You can see this is absolutely not bullshit. This is a real thing. And look how hard this guy wants to walk it, and how hard he works, and how hard Wayne works, and everybody else. If you can give, and it doesn't have to be much, folks. If you've got $10, $20, $80 to spare, every bit of it helps. And like I said, we've got several $1,000s to go. I don't know, last time you and I talked, it was, $4,000 or $5,000, $6,000 US, or whatever the number isn't anymore. But, together we can raise money to help this guy get his life back. And if not, it's not going to waste. You see the improvement. That's the cool thing about it, right? You know where the money's going. You see it. You've documented everything, and you've shown the doctors and the rehab and everything else, and the fact that he's enjoying life again and he's able to do more. And it's a huge thing. Me, especially, to be a part of it, it was just fantastic, because I know what trackers and skinners do in South Africa. And so likewise, I encourage everybody, if you can donate, if you've been to South Africa and you've had an enjoyable time, and you've realized how much the skinners and the trackers do to make your trip the trip of a lifetime, please reach out. I'll link the Back to Buddy campaign and in the description. I'll also do it in the social media post leading up to the podcast. But money's not going to waste. You can actually see where it's going and what it's doing. And Wayne documents everything, start to finish. And it's been fantastic. And that's a great thing that you've done. And especially for Zwei. And, I'll be back in April, so you and I'll chat offline, and I want to come see Zwei, and I'd like to try to get Steve over there to meet him and kind of surprise him. I think that would be a super cool thing to do. So we're going to work on that and see what we can do. But there's a couple of last, just a couple of things to close out. We've already been at this for a while, and it, unfortunately, especially when we get somebody like you on the podcast, 2 hours doesn't do a podcast justice. We could go for 5, 6, 7 hours just telling stories. So I think when we get in country this year, we'll definitely have to do a remote podcast, or us jump on the podcast with you, so we can kind of rehash some of this stuff and some of the funny stuff that happens. But, one of the things we talked about last podcast that nobody's going to see because it got picked up was we talked about, I made the mistake for whatever reason, between what you were posting and what I picked up, and it wasn't a bad on my part. I thought you were giving away a buffalo hunt, and you quickly corrected me, no, I'm not giving away a buffalo hunt. And I've seen the posts and the hunt giveaway and this and that, but between you release several episodes of a buffalo hunt recap and then this hunt, and you do it every year. But so you caught shit people don't believe. You posted this hunt giveaway. It's the second or third year you've done it, and people give you shit and comment stupid stuff oh, that's fake. There's no way you can do that. It's bullshit. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah. So obviously with social media, you've always got some fool on the other side that seems to know more about the hunt that you're selling or offering or competition than the rest, and they start calling fake and nonsense and crap, all the time. So I started in 2023. I wanted to try and build a new client base. So the reason why I gave away hunts, because obviously what I was doing wasn't cutting it. I wasn't getting the number of clients that I wanted. So I gave away 2 hunts. One guy came out. Tim had a hell of a hunt and added a few extra animals to his list. And then he booked again, and he's hunted buffalo with me now. Then the following year I did free day fees. And then you paid, whatever animals you wanted to hunt. Those 3 guys won the competition. Not one of those guys came out, and I think it's because they didn't put deposits. If guys put a deposit down, it kind of holds them to or accountable to actually come out. So that was a bit of a flop. And then this year I managed to do it again, and I gave away 3 prizes: a first prize, a second prize, and a third. And I got Zwei to actually do the drawing of the clients, which is awesome, because the guys are going to get to meet him and come and experience it with him. So they're basic plains game packages. I think there's 4 animals in the one and 3 animals in two, as it goes down in the price criteria. So it's like a blessbuck, a bushbuck, a warthog, and a bushpig, and then the other one's a bushbuck, warthog, and bushpig, and then the 2 pigs on the last one. So that's kind of and that's 7 days, all covered. Your accommodation, everything, your pH and stuff, and all you have to do is pay for your extra animals that you want to hunt when you come out with us. So it's a nice way for clients who wanted to take the gamble and try and get you, and then they've got extra spending money. But people called that a scam as well, and said it wasn't thing. Then the biggest one was the buff hunt. So
that's where I was going next. Into was the buff hunt.
The buff hunt. So the neighboring property has buffalo, and the outfitters that have hunted there many a times and haven't got it right, and have basically hunted the place poorly and made these buffalo extremely wild. So my brother was actually, the way this all came about was my brother picked a bucket list animal that he wanted to hunt this year. And people are under the impression that South Africans can hunt all these animals willy-nilly, free, because we're South African. That shit doesn't happen. We pay like the rest of you guys to hunt. And my brother wanted to hunt a buff, and he can only afford a buff cow. So we spoke to the neighbor next door. I gave my brother the contacts. He said, hook up with him. He might have a buff cow for you, and I will guide you to make it legit, because even as a South African, you need a registered dangerous game guide to guide you on a buff hunt. And we lined this all up, and then luckily for him, the manager said, well, shit, we don't want to shoot any more cows. I'll upgrade you to a bull, but it's got to be under 36 inches. So on this property, the reason they're shooting those buff under 36 inches, you can shoot solid hard boss buff. The thing with the place is, because it's such a thick and intense hunt in a deep valley, if you get a bull in front of you and he's semi-soft and he's under 36 inches, it's the bull that you're going to take, because you may not see these buff again. So lucky for us, in the first hunt, we had a buddy that joined. He shot a buff that was almost solid, and it was 34 and a half inches. Then my brother managed to shoot one on the second trip. He hunted 8 solid days to get one, and he shot it. It was under 36 inches. And the manager came and said to me, he said, well, Wayne, I've got the rest of these buff. I like the way you hunted them, with your clients, so being my brother, and think, would you be interested in marketing these buffs to international guys? So I said, well, dude, give me a fair rate on the buff and I will advertise them. I don't need to make much on them. The guys are going to come and be accommodated by us in our rustic accommodation. So I can give them a really good reduced rate there, because it's rustic cabin, home cooked meals. There's no 5-star lodging. But, as long as I get my PH fee for dangerous game and a small markup on the buff, let's put something that's really a deal and sell it as a buff experience, because it's a great way for a guy who thinks he can't afford to hunt buffalo, and he can come for 10 days, hunt a buffalo under 36 inches, a buff bull, for $7,600. Good Lord, I posted it on that Buffalo Dugger Boy group on Facebook to market, and this one, man, the amount of shit that I got there, that's not a true buff hunt, this is a scam. And I was like, dude, read the T's and C's. There's the whole description's there. There's no smoke and mirrors here that we're going to take your money and you're going to end up without a buff. But there is the likeliness that the buff is a tough hunt. So, one, you've got to be physically fit. You've got to be mobile. I'm going to be hunting you in very, very thick terrain, very steep valleys. So it's not for the old guy who's wanting a bucket list animal and he can't get out the truck and walk 10 yards to hunt. I won't sell it to you. I won't take your money and go, oh cool, I've got his money whether he gets a buff or not. Because it's about the only package that I'm selling. Just because of the way the landowner, wants the hunts done. So yeah, it's an unbelievable deal for a guy to stick his toe in the water and have a full-on buff. Yeah, he could shoot a solid hard boss buff of 35, 36 inches. As long as I don't go over 36 inches. If he wants to shoot bigger than that, which there are bigger bulls there, he's got to pay in, and it's like an extra $8,000 to get to buy those big bulls. You know what I mean? Because those are his really good bulls that he wants. But there are a lot of these under 36. It's still a full-on buff hunt.
Yeah, and that is a great deal. And I've hunted buff, and I know what they cost, and that's a great idea for somebody that thinks it may not. A buffalo dangerous game in general. People think that it may be unattainable for them because it's expensive, and that's absolutely true. It is expensive. Especially if predetermined that you've got to shoot a 40 or a 44 or a 50 or something super. You're talking about tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to go do this. This is an affordable way to go participate in a dangerous game hunt and to try to harvest a buffalo. And I say try because there's no guarantees in buffalo hunting.
Yeah.
None. It is hard. You're out there, that you don't have helicopters running shit towards you and shooting them up the road. You're out there doing it the right way. And there are others that do shit. They will absolutely cheat and use whatever vehicles, choppers and shit. That's not how this is. So to get your foot, dip your foot into the dangerous game, that side of the industry, that dangerous game marketing, get in there and hunt a buffalo the right way. I think most people, I did my first buff hunt with Hannes this past year with Hannes and Chris. I didn't even know the thing measured, but it was under 40, and the measurement didn't matter to me. I didn't care. I was able to get a pretty good. I didn't get the kind of deal you're offering though by any stretch of the imagination. But it was severely more expensive to do it. But I had a great time, and I think for people to dip their foot off into that dangerous game hunting, that's a great opportunity. I really encourage people to do it, and where you're hunting them is going to be unique and it's going to be challenging. And like I said, I think it's great. And I hand of God, folks, it's not bullshit. I've heard the stories. I've seen the video. It's a real thing.
The YouTube video is theirs. Said to guys as well where they call bullshit on it. I said, I've got 2 YouTube videos that you must go and watch, and then go and listen to the 2 podcasts about it as 2 South Africans explain their experience. My brother not getting a buff on the first time out, and the other guy getting his buff and talking about it from their perspective. And then when my brother eventually got his, I actually pulled the manager on, for him to explain why we are shooting these buff. Because I got crap for my brother's buff. Oh, you shot a baby buffalo. We did not call it a trophy. We did not call it an old hard boss buff. It was a buffalo bull under 36 inches, what the landowner wanted. It was a full-on buff experience for my brother, and it was the opportunity we had. And the reason why he's shooting those bulls is because he's got too many of that genetic that he wants out before he can reintroduce better stuff, because they haven't introduced buffalo on that property since they put them on. So it's a closed herd buffalo group. There's no put in and take on this part. That's a closed herd. But he wants to get rid of those under 36-inch bulls because there are a lot of them that are hard bossed that aren't going to get any bigger, so that they can reintroduce some new genetics to the herd. And it's like, for example, I think on my trophy price list, I've got a buffalo at $13,000, but that still limits me to a buffalo under 40 because of what the landowners charge. But then my normal buff special for 10 days, where I can hunt up to a 38-inch buff, it's sold as a hard boss hunt. So the buff could range from 30 to 38. It's $15,000, and that's a special. And here I'm selling you a buff that you could shoot up to 36 inches for $7,600. It's an absolute steal.
Yeah, that's a great deal. And this will definitely be a short, so we'll definitely cut that a little short. But listen, I don't want to, done this twice now, and I appreciate you staying up late. There's a 7-hour time difference, so it's already 10:30 your time. So let's wrap this up with some rapid fire questions. What do you think, Stephen? You good with that? And these aren't going to be bad. What is the most underrated animal to hunt in the Eastern Cape?
Most underrated animal. Is that what you said?
In the Eastern Cape to hunt.
In the Eastern Cape. For me, I would say the bushpig. People don't give it enough credit. There's a lot of hard work that goes into hunting that, especially you're doing baits. So if you're wanting the poor man's leopard experience, I would say go after one of those. They're definitely an awesome trophy.
I hate bush pigs. I finally got one this past year. Yeah. By chance. It was at night with one. I caught him out in the maize field, but yeah. I've sat for those things and hours and hours and hours. I hate them. They're like my nemesis. It's like a f***ing unicorn. I didn't think they existed till this year.
I've had a client come 3 times and we still haven't got one. But I've got baits, and I'm an avid, baiter, and we've done it for years. And like I said, I've got the whole podcast or YouTube series on how to set up baits, and when it works, it works. When it doesn't, it's long hours.
I think a bushbuck hunt is easier than a bush pig. That's easy comparatively.
I say depending on where you're hunting your bushbuck, eh? So I find bushbuck very difficult to guide a client. Bushbuck is my unicorn. If I'm going to screw up on shooting an animal or wounding an animal, it's going to be a thing that gives me a heart rate that runs 120 miles an hour. So it's definitely my unicorn animal. And guiding with a client, I don't like it because of the amount of pressure you get put under in a short space of time. It's a very difficult and elusive animal to hunt. I've only shot probably 10 bushbuck in my lifetime, and I've grown up here. So, and especially we're talking about quality bushbuck. You can go and shoot lots of little things like this, you know what I mean? But we're wanting to shoot that 13 inches and up. You want to mature. So, and they are a very tough animal to hunt with a client.
What's the craziest thing you've ever seen a client do in camp?
Craziest thing that I've seen. The craziest thing that I've had a client do to me is throw my rifle at me.
Okay, there's got to be a story behind that.
So it was a French-Canadian dude. And again, wasn't given the right information by the outfitter. They were hiring rifles when they came out. It was a 2-on-1 hunt. Him and his son's fiance came out. And he was quite a miserable fuck, to put it lightly. And I was warned about him by the previous group that came out, which were brilliant. They booked through with the same agent. And we got to the shooting range and I pulled out one rifle. So if you're coming to South Africa and you're hunting with your PH, the only legal way for you to use a rifle in South Africa is to hunt with your PH's rifle, or have the company, the actual outfitting company, have their firearms on an accredited license that they can issue it to the client while he's out hunting. And very few outfitters do that. You'll always use your PH's rifle. And I only had one rifle and he was expecting there was 2. So what I said to him is, I'm quite happy to travel the hour home and fetch my second rifle that you've got your own, but you and your son won't be shooting at the same time. He'll shoot one and you'll shoot one, and you guys have got a package, so you will go along whatever comes out. So I think what happened was we shot a kudu. The son shot first. The next animal that came round was an impala, so the father shot the impala, and then we got a second impala that came out, and the next animal that came out was one of the son's second animals, and he was pissed off that the son shot twice in a row. It was like his turn, so it was like a childish move. I'm like, but it's not your animal to shoot, that's his animal. You've already shot that species. So he was pissed off about that, and the hunt just kept having the same shit over and over and over again. And then we got to a property where we were hunting fallow deer, and he wasn't shooting a fallow deer. He was going to be hunting a springbuck and something else. And because I think the son shot the day before last, and it was his turn to shoot now, and it wasn't his species, I said, I need the rifle. And he took the rifle and he threw it at me. And luckily I caught it. And the son looked at me and was like, I apologize for my dad. I can't, And that is the craziest thing I had me. Literally, a client threw my 270 at me.
There would have been an ass whipping coming along with that rifle right there.
I had to be polite.
Yeah. Fuck that shit. But so that's actually kind of funny. Yes. And you said he was French?
Yeah, he was French Canadian. Dude, with that company at the time, when I was hunting there, we had a lot of good French Canadian clients, like really nice guys. As I say, the previous group that came out, who knew them, those guys were freaking awesome. They looked after me and we had a hell of a hunt. The one oak was a new time hunter, so it was nice taking him for all his first animals. Shit, he started his hunting career out in Africa. You know what I mean? What person comes from overseas and has never shot anything there and comes and shoots, 5 animals on a trophy hunt. So, yeah, we had some nice oaks there.
So here's another one. What's one myth about American hunters that actually make you laugh? So, and I'll give you an example. From an American hunter perspective, I'm going over there the first time, right? So what I have envisioned in my mind is Lion King. Like, that's what I envision South Africa to be, is Lion King. So what's one, like, there's amongst PHs in South Africa. And so what's one myth about American hunters that makes you laugh? What do you think that, people have talked about over the years, and Americans are coming over, no matter what, that's what it is.
Shit. Now you've really thrown a spanner in the works with this one.
Oh, yeah. I dove deep.
You dove deep. I don't even, yeah. Can I plead the fifth and not answer that one?
Well, it'd probably be better if you get against that one, especially with your American clients. You may cut off.
Shit, let me think about that one. It's a bit of a tough one. I can't think of one off the top of my head.
We'll go back to that one.
Yeah.
So who wins a fight? A wounded buffalo or a Springbok fan on beer number 7?
I would say how big's the buff. The Springbok fan on beer number 7 is definitely going to win it. The man's been, and especially if the Springboks have won.
Yeah, and they're properly pissed at that point in time.
Yeah.
And for folks that don't know, the Springboks are the national rugby team in South Africa, who actually I watch religiously now. I was never a rugby fan. Started watching South Africa. I actually have a photo that I took earlier this week, and my son, who's 4 months old now, has got his own Springboks jersey that Hannah sent to us with his name on the back and shit, and it's fucking awesome. I actually really like that game. But like, you guys are rabid over rugby though. Like, South Africans, dude, if you've got a hunt and it's like rugby season and the game's on, like, y'all, and I've watched it firsthand, you motherfuckers will do anything to get out of a hunt or get it wrapped up quick so you can get back and watch the match.
Yeah, that's the problem, because winter time's rugby time and so is it hunting time. So you got to make sure that they all line up perfectly, and there better be a damn freaking TV in the lodge so the guys can get back and have beers and watch it.
Absolutely. All right, here's another one. When clients leave camp, what's one story you hope they tell when they get home? I'm thinking like authenticity and like the magic that is Africa. What's one story you hope they tell other people when they get back home?
For me personally, with all my clients, that I hope that the thing is hospitality side of everything. You'll very seldom find a group of people that want to look after you that well while you're out here. And I think that's a hell of a South African trait. Is, we always want to make sure everyone's well fed, well looked after, having that like homeliness. That's what I'd like the guys to take back home and share, that, we were really looked after well.
That's actually perfect. We often talk here, and we actually just had this conversation, that if more American outfitters, US-based outfitters, would go and hunt with South African outfitters, it would be a totally different experience in the States, like they would absolutely learn something from how y'all operate. And if they could incorporate not in its entirety, but at least some small portions of that, the experience will be much better. State. So, well, good. You want to hit that one that you passed on now, or you want to? Oh, we got to wrap this shit up.
No, shit. I can't think of a myth, bud.
He doesn't want to throw Americans under the bus. It's okay. We fucking overpack. We're mouthy. We think we know everything. Tell you how to do your job. I'll tell you one. The most important thing, I'll give some, aside from the packing and all the other bullshit.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll leave for everybody's podcast, when you go to South Africa, and everybody should, when you meet your PH and you're out hunting, do not try to guide your fucking guide. Your PH is way smarter than you are. So just because you whitetail hunted or elk hunted or you've chased pronghorn or you've hunted bear doesn't mean you knew a flying thing about any of these species in South Africa, what they're going to do, how they're going to act, how to hunt them. So point being, shut your mouth and rely on the person that does it for a living rather than you trying to guide your guide.
Yeah. No, very true. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, the big thing is listen to your PH when you're out. You know, we've done this, or I can say most of us have done this since we were kids. So yeah, we definitely know how the terrain works, and trust your PH. Make sure you trust your PH.
And we'll close on this one, but one thing I like, the one takeaway that I was told years ago, and it's something I kind of live by. If you're in South Africa and your PH, you've got this list or whatever in your mind, these species you want to hunt, and your PH says, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
Yeah.
So long as it's monetarily feasible, you should listen to that guy and get up on those sticks quickly, because those oh shit moments, they don't come every trip. That may happen every fourth or fifth, or may never happen to you. So if your PH says, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, you better send it. Right, Sahan?
Yep, for sure.
Definitely. Because that you know, read your PH's body language. When your PH, I laugh. Tim says a story where, you know, he says, Wayne, you've got another whole gear when you see something exceptional. He says, I've hunted enough with you now to know when you go, shit, let's go. He knows he better not question. I put the sticks over, you're going to pull the trigger.
Absolutely. Well, Wayne, man, I appreciate you catching up with us. I know we tried to do this twice now. I don't want to keep you late any longer, or keep you up any longer. Really appreciate it. And so tell people they're interested in hunting with you. They're interested in podcasts. How can they find you?
So all our social media handles, it's African Brother Safaris. And you can find us on Instagram, Facebook. We've got the Facebook page. And then our website is www.africanbrothersafaris.com. You can check us out there. But the best way is just follow me on Instagram, and you're going to see a day in the life of Wayne running around, doing random shit, getting ready for season, hunting, and get to know me. You know, and that's where you'll find me. Drop us a WhatsApp. The details are all there. And get chatting about an adventure. That's all I got to say. Hunting in Africa is an adventure.
That's awesome. Well, folks, until next time, I'm Sean Koge. This is Mike Staffen. Live free, hunt hard, keep chasing that adventure. Then you're supposed to say something. And get you some of that. And get you some of that. Wayne, cheers, buddy.
Thanks, man. Yes, I really appreciate it, guys.